One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 601-620. Chapter 601-elicited gene. I always live a life of self-reliance and struggle, and it feels good to be nurtured occasionally. Haha, did you hear that, Ching? You were taken care of by this lady, you have to treat me well. Yichi also heard the words behind her, and couldn't help but smile. Yang Qing rolled his eyes, didn't say anything, just walked towards the front on his own, and immediately distanced himself from Yichi. Oh, look, Baifume is nice to her, but he doesn't pay attention to her, he's really a scumbag. What do you know, this kid is highly skilled, it's called hard to find. It's amazing. If I had his 3-point effort, I wouldn't have chased Yaoer for 3 years, and I didn't catch up, alas. The words behind him came again. Yang Qing almost fell over. Yichi laughed nonstop. For a full month, Yichi asked Yang Qing to play with her, just because she disappeared for so long and didn't say hello, which made her worry. They traveled in various mountains and waters, went to amusement parks, and ate all kinds of delicacies. They were almost seen by them on the beach, the sea, the sky, and the Tianjin Cape on the earth. A month later, Yang Qing and Yichi entered the underground laboratory. At this time, the researchers were busy with the experiment, and no one paid any attention to them. We're very busy right now, there's been a breakthrough in testing, and all we need now is time. About 5 years, a new experimental body will be born, and it will be this planet, no, perhaps the most powerful individual in the entire universe. Tanis said confidently. He has a strong confidence that this new life form will be extremely powerful. Of course, Tanis doesn't understand the universe, but he understands Yang Qing. The perfection of this life body will surpass Yang Qing, which is beyond doubt. Absorb the most perfect part of Yang Qing, and combine the advantages of the Earthlings, the combination of the two will produce a new individual that will be extremely powerful. 5 years. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and nodded. He is not so urgent to need an opponent at this time, because of the appearance of Abinos, he has broken through to the stage of Super Saiyan 2, breaking the previous bottleneck. It will take time to consolidate these strengths and maximize the strength of this level. And after 5 years, maybe his strength can be raised to a new level, or maybe he has fallen into a bottleneck. At that time, can this new life form surprise itself? These are all uncertain things. 5 years is the most suitable time, but there is one thing, you may be needed at that time. Tanis said in a condensed voice. What? Yang Qing wondered. That's how powerful the new life form will be, even we can't guarantee it. It is possible that he will bring disaster to the world. Tanis said slowly, with a heavy tone. You can rest assured, whether it is a Saiyan or a human being, when they are just born, their strength value will be the smallest, and I can still control it. Yang Qing said with a smile. Since you have such confidence, then we will let it go. Tanis nodded. After that, Yang Qing glanced at his clone. The state of this body at this time was still 3 years old. The eyebrows were similar to him, but they were different. It was full of hostility, and the body exuded strong energy fluctuations. A faint golden halo enveloped his body. Of course, at the moment this body is sleeping, with its eyes tightly closed. Yang Qing found that this clone seemed to be even more perfect than him. He was closer to the power of the Super Saiyan's top end, so he couldn't help being a little stunned. When we were studying your DNA, we discovered a more ancient gene, and when we were shaping this body, we let him out. It can be said that if it is not unconscious, he may be stronger than you. This sentence of Tanis made Yang Qing a little shocked. How could scientists on Earth have such a terrifying technology? How to draw out the ancient bloodline in my body? Yang Qing asked directly. This is the secret of Saiyan blood, and he naturally knows it urgently. He knew that the apex of the Super Saiyan was naturally the Super Saiyan God, that red-haired, transfiguration state that was powerful enough to shake the energy of the entire universe and could fight against the god of destruction. Drawing out the secrets between the blood vessels. Tanis was stunned for a moment, then said strangely, if it is a single cell, it is relatively easy to do, but you have already formed, if you want to elicit and change it, it may be very troublesome. In other words, can it be done? Yang Qing asked with a flash of light in his eyes. It can be done, but the amount of work is not small. Tannis said. Yang Qing laughed. Since it can be done, then why is there any hesitation? As for the size of the project, he naturally knew what Tannis meant. Since there is only one cell in a single cell, it is easy to elicit it. However, if it is a whole, then such an amount of work is absolutely unimaginable. How many cells are there in a person's body? How many planets there are in the universe? This is probably a question that no one can answer. However, since it can be done, even if only a part of it is changed, it will be of great help to him. Yang Qing left here, and after a day's rest, he came to the underground laboratory again the next day. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. We modified this machine because we never considered changing your genetic bloodline for you. Therefore, this machine is only initially created, and the effect may not be large. Tannis said. First of all, it starts with your heart. Blood flows through your heart. If your heart is transformed to be stronger, your body will naturally be stronger. And, if a cell is successfully remodeled, your body also undergoes cell division, metabolism, and the transformation of the human body. In the long run, the cells in your whole body will be replaced one day. Tannis said professionally. Yang Qing nodded. For the human body, it can be seen that Tannis is very professional. Sit in, the machine will run automatically, you don't need to do anything else, just keep calm. Tannis' voice came, and Yang Qing did so. Immediately after, a tiny needle protruded out and headed towards Yang Qing's heart. Chapter 602-completely remodeled. After feeling a little bit of acupuncture, Yang Qing was acutely aware that a piece of cells in his heart began to fluctuate violently. This kind of fluctuation is very obvious, as if it is constantly oscillating, as if it is about to explode. An unknown liquid body was injected into the needle. Yang Qing can see clearly, he observes himself mentally and can clearly observe his own body. This is the inner vision of the legend, the cultivator who existed in the previous life, but after the spiritual power reaches a certain level, it will naturally have this ability. Gradually, the vibration of the cells around the heart became a lot more flat. In the end, calm was restored. Until the end, only one cell continued to vibrate. It seems that only this cell can succeed this time. Yang Qingxin had such a hunch. How many cells are there in the human body? I'm afraid it's an incalculable amount, and just imagining it makes one's scalp tingle. I don't know how long it took. Yang Qing's mental body seemed to be in a chaotic emptiness. This cell vibrated more and more violently, and at the end, it exploded with a bang. Then, an unknown force seemed to be pulled out from the inside of the large cell particles, and gradually turned into a vortex-shaped thing. Gold, and the more peripheral area, is a black nothingness. Its black occupies an extremely large area, followed by gold, which is obviously much rarer. As for blue, it is even more pitiful, and when it comes to red, there is only one. Time passed, and when Yang Qing opened his eyes again, he didn't notice the difference in his body. It's just that the vortex of cells in the heart is quietly floating and spinning, like a dazzling galaxy. Only one succeeded. It's okay, just take it slow, and sooner or later a massive change will be done. Tannis comforted Yang Qingdao. Does a cell have a big impact on the human body as a whole? Saying big is also big, which means that the evolution of the human body is small, but it is also small and pitiful, and it has hardly taken that step. Yeah, Yang Qing nodded, but his eyes flickered. Speaking of which, the cell transformation of Tannis seems to be more like a catalytic method, which catalyzes the power that originally belonged to the Saiyan bloodline. If this is the case, then, with the help of the magical liquid and body, he may be able to do it himself. Tannis, give me some of your catalytic liquid and body. Maybe, I have thought of another way. Yang Qing said with a smile. Tannis froze for a moment, then nodded. When he left, Yang Qing had a bottle of blue liquid and body in his hand, which was very dense and sparkling, and seemed to be able to light up at night. Back in his room, after sitting with Yi Qi and watching TV, Yang Qing came to the bedroom. He carefully stared at the blue liquid and body in his hand. Tanis hadn't named the bottle of catalyst, but just used the lab's code name, called Potion E85. Maybe try. Yang Qing's eyes lit up, opened the bottle cap, and poured the liquid into his mouth. He only poured 2 or 3 drops. Under the observation of mental power, it would not be less or more. When this liquid and body entered the stomach, it was quickly absorbed by his powerful digestive ability. The speed was incredible, and at the same time, some cells in his body began to vibrate violently. It was as if thousands of bombs exploded together in his body, and every part of him instantly turned into cell particles. Of course, this was the result of his own mental power also helping the medicine to work. Soon, this piece of cells quickly condensed again, becoming the cell-like vortex structure at the heart, spinning slowly. Success! Yang Qing was overjoyed. As he expected, with the joint efforts of his method and this medicine, the cells in his body were able to complete the extraction of their potential. At this moment, the scale of change for him is not large, but one day, he will complete a huge change, and the inexplicable genetic power in his body will be brought out. For the next period of time, the goal is to cultivate divinity, and then draw out the power within the body. Yang Qing said with a smile on his face. With a goal, Yang Qing will naturally make rapid progress. 1 year, he consolidated his Super Saiyan 2 power, completely cultivated this state, and was able to easily change to the 2 stage, and also remove the shortcomings of strong power but insufficient speed, and truly became perfect. 2 years later, his Super Saiyan 2 stage strength has also reached the bottleneck of perfection. If he wants to move forward again, he needs to transform into Super Saiyan 3. However, the power of Super Saiyan 3 is so powerful that it has almost surpassed the boundaries of human beings and gods. Even gods are not as powerful as Super Saiyan 3. Therefore, it is undoubtedly more difficult to transform into this stage. In a while, it won't be possible at all. In addition, it is worth noting that Seiya, who has finally cultivated his combat power to 120,000, has completed his Super Saiyan transformation. Although his breath is far less powerful than Yang Qing, he is still in the first stage of Super Saiyan. Although he has a fighting power of millions, with his swordsmanship, his strength can be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Seiya, who had completed the transformation, challenged Yang Qing with excitement. Seiya, you are still too impulsive. Yang Qing shook his head and smiled. He hadn't transformed, just had black hair, but Seiya, who was in the first stage of the super tournament, was hanged and beaten by him for nearly 2 hours, and finally lay on the ground exhausted, exhaling. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Panting and breathing. Elder, you are too powerful. Yang Qing just laughed. His raw power is indeed much more than Seiya at the moment. However, he also cultivated step by step, and in addition, coupled with the cultivation of God, and the extraction of blood. In the blink of an eye, 4 years have passed. On this day, Yang Qing, who was suspended in the sky, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were very clear at this moment, like a river where the bottom could be seen. It's all done. My cells, the transformation is all done. After 4 full years of hard work, until now, Yang Qing's whole body cells have finally been completely transformed under his insistence. At this moment, if you observe the inside of his body, you can see that the cells on his body are all swirling galaxies. At this time, his hair and appearance also began to change. Chapter 603-God. Between the black hair, there was a trace of red mixed in. This red is so scarlet, but it is not blood-like red, but like agate, crystal clear. These reds are few and far between, appearing mysterious and vivid in between blacks. A strange color appeared around Yang Qing's body, and a different temperament came from his body. Suddenly, he seemed to be a few years younger, and his face became like when he was 21 or 2 years old, and his skin showed luster and light. His figure also seems to have shrunk a little again. Of course, compared with the previous shrinkage, it is almost imperceptible. Clenching his fists, a smile appeared on Yang Qing's face. Did the change of Super Saiyan God be introduced in advance? The change in Yang Qing's body at this moment is like a Super Saiyan God, but he is much worse than the complete one. But then, Yang Qing's face changed, and he closed his eyes suddenly. Such a quantity of divinity. The moment he closed his eyes, Yang Qing was shocked to discover that from the depths of his body, the innermost layer of the cell vortex burst out with a golden light, which merged with the divinity in his body in an instant. Together, countless cells, numbering in the billions of cells, emit such a vast divine light at the same time. In an instant, Yang Qing's whole body was enveloped in a golden light. This majestic divinity far exceeded his previous level, and in just an instant, his entire body of God swelled 100 times. At this moment, Yang Qing opened his eyes to the sky, and at a glance, he saw the vast and deep starry sky, the slowly rotating galaxy. One step forward, the next moment, Yang Qing's body appeared in the void of the universe. Swish! The dazzling divine light began to shine, and the energy from the cells in the depths of Yang Qing's body surged again, and the divine light was dazzling and terrifying. In an instant, he wrapped his whole body, enlarged his body, and swelled 100 times again. My dimensional level is going to be advanced. Yang Qing's eyes radiated amazing colors, and his face was full of smiles. The development of Saiyan cells in his body did not directly improve his combat power, but it made the dimensional level in his body rise again. The complete Super Saiyan God is basically the same level of existence as Beerus, the god of destruction. In terms of dimensional level, it is the same as the Kaiwang God, and it is also the highest god in the universe. Although Yang Qing's development of the cells in the body at this moment only inspired a touch of divinity, the help to his divine level is also extremely obvious. It can be seen that the divinity in Yang Qing's body is constantly expanding, but in an instant, his divine body is as huge as a star, standing in the void. Reach out to hold the mountains in the palm of your hand, and bend your waist to pick up the entire star. Of course, this is just his divine body, does not possess strong combat power, does not involve the material world, and represents his deep understanding of the universe. The speed of this expansion is still increasing. The divine light in the depths of the cells in the body seems to be endless, and the volcanic eruption spreads towards the outside world, and integrates with his previous divine body. Only half an hour had passed, and Yang Qing's body was already as wide as 2 or 3 planets. Immediately following, his divine body is still extending, and the speed is even faster. 2 hours have passed, his body has covered 2/3 of the solar system, and the void of the universe is full of golden rays of light. Of course, this light cannot be seen by ordinary creatures, and only creatures at the divine level can detect it. 3 hours passed, and the speed of divine blossoming began to slow down. Yang Qing's body has covered the entire solar system. After another 2 hours, Yang Qing's slimming momentum finally stopped. He observed that his body at the moment was 1/5 larger than the solar system, and his heart was a little shocked. What level is this divine light? I haven't reached the Realm King yet, but it seems to have surpassed the level of Yama. As long as the dimensional level reaches the gods, it can actually pass through the barriers of mortals and gods, and shuttle freely. Moreover, even if the physical body dies, the divine body still exists, with the power as powerful as the physical body, which can almost be regarded as an extra life. Moreover, the lifespan of the divine body is almost endless, and there is no end of time at all. At this moment, Yang Qing can be said to be a real god, and he has endless life. You can travel through the world of mortals and gods at will. The divine light shrank, and soon returned to his original appearance, and then became one with the flesh. What is the god above Yama? Shaking his head, Yang Qing didn't know it himself, it was just the initiation of Super Saiyan God. Although there was only a slight change, it also benefited him a lot. Returning to the earth again, Yang Qing suddenly remembered that the last time he made an appointment with the gods to ask about martial arts, it was just that many things happened and delayed. As soon as he turned around, he teleported directly. Temple above earth. The god looked at the void above the earth with shock on his face at this time, and his eyes, a dazzling golden color, almost covered his eyes. Such a majestic divinity, the dimensional level is too different. God's whole body trembled and trembled a little. In the face of such a level of God, even he had to bow down and worship. In a sense, the dimensional level difference between gods also means the difference in combat power. The improvement of the dimensional level can also increase the potential and combat effectiveness of individual creatures. It's just that Yang Qing himself has already broken the boundary between humans and gods. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Such an increase has become more inconspicuous. Swish. Suddenly, a slight wind sounded, and God immediately turned his head. God, I'm Qing, I came to see you last time on an appointment. Seeing the old face of God, Yang Qing said with a smile. Are you the god from last time? The god asked tentatively. He withdrew his gaze at this time, and the dazzling divine light of the universe was also put away by that person. It's me, I'm here to discuss some questions about martial arts with you. Yang Qing nodded and smiled. God's eyes flashed, and then he probed towards Yang Qing's body. But after a breath, a look of shock appeared in his old and turbid eyes. You are the god who was in the universe just now. Chapter 604-Genius. God. Yang Qing had a puzzled look on his face. Our dimensional levels are too different. You must have been a god in the universe just now, right? The god asked respectfully. The other party's dimensional level is really far from his. He only touched the other party's body slightly, and his whole body trembled, and the virtual sweat came out. This is obviously caused by the fact that the two are not at the same level, and because of this, Shen instantly became extremely respectful to Yang Qing. I was indeed in the universe just now, did you find it? Yang Qing asked curiously. Just now, the dimensional aura of the gods pervaded the entire planet, and I naturally noticed it. The god said respectfully. Only then did Yang Qing understand, but she was a little speechless when she respected God. I'm discussing martial arts with you. You look like you're here to ask me about our discussion of martial arts. Yang Qing asked slightly. Seeing God like this, he knew in his heart that there was no drama. God, your realm is far beyond mine, and the way of natural martial arts is also above me, so you don't need to discuss with me at all. God said more respectfully. Yang Qing seemed to see the fine beads of sweat on the other's forehead. This god seems to be frightened by himself. The helpless heart sighed. Yang Qing thought about it. Indeed, as God said, his realm and combat power are far higher than the other party. There is really no need to discuss with the other party, he just wants to get some inspiration from the other party's cultivation. But this is definitely not possible. You seem to be afraid of me. Yang Qing asked with a smile. I respect God, but I don't know where God came from. God finally couldn't help asking. Yang Qing was stunned, but didn't know how to respond. After a while, he pointed to the sky, and no matter what the other party realized, he left here in a flash. Knowing such means, this god named Qing is by no means ordinary. What did he come to Earth for? With a solemn expression on his face, he wiped the sweat on his forehead and murmured. From many years ago to now, the Earth has been very stable, and suddenly a god came, and it was far stronger than him, so God couldn't help but think about it. On Earth, Yi Qi's house. When Yang Qing appeared again, it was in his bedroom, and Yi Qi was bored watching TV in his room. Where have you been? Yi Qi asked. Heaven. Pointing to the sky again, Yang Qing said with a smile. It's a lie again. Yi Qi pursed her mouth and said angrily, I don't want to worry about you, come with me quickly, something happened to your martial arts hall. Something happened. Yang Qing was stunned, and finally remembered that Yi Kiko's martial arts hall was the Wu Qingliu martial arts he left on the earth. What happened? As Yi Qi pulled, Yang Qing asked. There is a disciple who made your Wu Qingliu practice crooked, but strangely, he seems to have become stronger. And Yi Qi paused, then looked back at Yang Qing. And, in turn, he beat up all the old masters in the martial arts hall. He also said that his newly practiced martial arts is the strongest, and that your Wu Qingliu is stubborn and has not enlightened. Ah, Yang Qing was stunned, feeling a little unbelievable. His martial arts, the one that he worked so hard to research, was actually said by a disciple who jumped out of nowhere to be stubborn and not enlightened. This is really a big joke in the world. Yang Qing thought it was a bit ridiculous, and at the same time became interested in this arrogant boy. What's that kid's name? Yang Qing asked. His name is Ling Yi, and he is only 14 years old this year. Yi Qi said with a strange look. Because no matter whether this kid is arrogant or not, at the age of 14, he chose all the martial arts gyms in Wu Qingliu, which proves that he is definitely an unusual genius. Because Yang Qing won the first place in the world's #1 martial arts association, under the influence of Yi Qi's family, it can be said that his reputation has spread all over the world. The martial arts hall they opened is also growing stronger day by day. After several years of development, there are many masters in it. There are even some people who have won many martial arts championships, even the top 8 of the World Martial Arts Association. But even so, was this kid named Ling Yi selected by himself? Such a kid, isn't he talented? According to this kid still has some talent. Yang Qing laughed softly, then let's see. It's not just a talent, it's a genius, isn't it? Yi Qi rolled his eyes at him and said. Yang Qing smiled and didn't say anything. Maybe Ling Yi was really a genius, but to him, it didn't really make much difference whether he was a genius or a mediocre one, because basically, they were all beings that could be wiped out by his punch. As long as the combat power does not reach the same level as him, whether it is a genius or an idiot, it is the same. Soon, Yi Qi and Yang Qing came to the martial arts hall. Wu Qingliu's martial arts halls are actually very widely distributed, all over the western capital. Here, it is Wu Qingliu's general manager, very close to the Yi family. What the hell is going on? As soon as Yi Qi entered the door, she spoke to the disciples on the left and right. Miss Yi, that kid is here again today, and all the masters of the general manager were defeated by him. A disciple next to him. This chapter is not over, click on the next page to continue reading. Said with an embarrassed face. A martial arts hall was chosen by a 14-year-old child, which is really embarrassing. Whose disciple is he? Yi Qi asked again. It's the disciple of an old man who tweeted Yun Bai. The man said immediately. Who is Yun Bai? Yi Qi asked suspiciously. It's just an ordinary old disciple in charge of the martial arts hall. The man smiled wryly. A mediocre old disciple who taught a genius who swept the entire martial arts hall. Are you kidding me? Yi Qi's voice was much higher, and everyone in the field lowered their heads in shame. It's not that they don't work hard, it's just that the kid is a little changed. Everyone said silently, but did not dare to respond. At this time, Yang Qing felt amused when she heard Yi Qi's last voice, and laughed out loud. This laughter was very loud, and everyone in the martial arts hall heard it, and immediately turned their attention to him. How could anyone dare to laugh on such a serious occasion? However, the next moment, when they saw the face with an extremely deep memory, their expressions suddenly changed drastically. Chapter 605-I was right. The owner. My God, it's the owner. It's Qing, he is Qing, the first place in the world's #1 martial arts club, the one who created Wu Qingliu. He is the master of all of us, and he is the head of the museum. There was a commotion, and the entire martial arts hall suddenly became noisy. The owner of the museum came here. I didn't expect that even the owner of the museum was shocked by this incident. It is said that the master's martial arts has reached an unimaginable level, and even the living god, Teacher Wu Tian, is not his opponent. But as long as the owner of the pavilion comes, that kid will not be a big problem. Everyone's discussion was clearly passed into Yang Qing's ears, making him smile. Although he basically didn't come to the martial arts hall in recent years, and Yi Qi handled everything, it was an unquestionable fact that he created Wu Qingliu, and because of this, he was almost deified. In the eyes of these disciples, he is almost an invincible existence. Where is Ling Yi? Yang Qing asked the crowd. He came in the morning and has left. A young man about 17 or 18 looked at Yang Qing with admiration and awe. However, he said he would come back in the afternoon. Oh, Yang Qing raised his eyebrows. It's interesting, this kid is quite brave. He said that Wu Qingliu couldn't find anyone who could be his opponent, he would come to persecute us every day, and then. The young man hesitated. Then what? Yang Qing asked. Then force you to take action and compete with you. The young man said with his eyes closed. This kid is so courageous, he even wants to compare himself with me. Yang Qing couldn't help laughing and laughing, not to mention anything else. In his capacity, he wouldn't fight a little guy who was only 14 years old. Wugwan, can't you really find someone who is on the same level as him? Yang Qing asked. I can't find it, the young man on the side said with a bitter face. That kid is really talented. He improved Wu Qingliu and almost changed it into another martial art. No one in the entire martial arts hall is his opponent. Where's Saya? Yang Qing did not answer, but asked directly. Saya. The young man was stunned, his eyes showing a hint of doubt. Saya is the oldest man in the martial arts hall, the one who usually never speaks. Someone next to him reminded him in a low voice. He usually never participates in any competitions. The young man looked at Yang Qing's face cautiously. Could it be that this big man named Saya is very strong? However, I have never seen him show his kung fu before, huh? Call him over to me. Yang Qing waved his hand. This kind of thing, let's say you take action, although it is still a bit overkill. After a while, Saya's tall and small tower-like figure appeared in front of Yang Qing. As soon as he saw Yang Qing, Saya's originally cold face immediately grinned, and there was a hint of flattery on his face. Elder, you are actually here, hee, are you out of the customs? Have you become stronger? Are there any new skills to teach me? A series of words spit out from Saya's mouth, making Yang Qing wonder whether to laugh or cry, and it also made the people present stunned. Usually, this strong man has never been so talkative. For nearly a month, the number of times they saw Saya speak is also very few. As soon as you defeat a kid, I'll teach you new things. Yang Qing couldn't stand Saya's appearance and said directly. A kid? Saya's eyes lit up immediately. Just beat him. Do you want to kill him? Saying that, Saya's right hand was placed on the hilt of the sword behind his back, murderous. Just need to beat him. Yang Qing shook his head and said, after thinking about it, he warned Saya again. He's weak, be careful not to hurt him. Very weak. Saya wondered, but Yang Qing did not explain. Next, the big man stood in the martial arts hall and began to wait. Others also looked at Saya strangely, unable to imagine that this brawny man, who was usually silent, had the strength to defeat Ling Yi. Soon, 3 hours passed, and it was 5 o'clock. At this time, the door of the martial arts hall suddenly creaked, and a young man who was almost 1.7 meters tall walked in. His brows were full of heroic spirit, and his face was full of confidence, but the corners of his mouth were cold and there was no smile. The moment they saw this young man, the masters of the martial arts hall all condensed their eyes, and their faces were tense. Ling Yi, are you here again? A young man stood up and shouted, Patriarch Wu Qingliu is here, haven't you worshipped Patriarch? Hearing this young man's words, Ling Yi raised his eyebrows, and then showed a smile, then he glanced at the people present and aimed at Yang Qing. This face of you, I pay homage to the portrait many times a day. This is what my master ordered me to do. I'm doing it too. Yang Qing's eyes flashed and he began to observe the young man. At first glance, this young man was dressed in a slick robe, which was inconspicuous, but then he discovered that this kid is like a drawn sword, sharp-edged, and has powerful lethal power. We'll be hurt by him. Sure enough. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Somewhat different. But, in my heart, I've always been disdainful of you. Ling Yi said outrageous words, which made the martial masters present furious and shouted angrily. Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, but looked at this kid with a smile. Tell me. Your martial arts are too rigid, the moves are rigid, there is no change, the wind is the wind, and the thunder is the thunder. It seems ridiculous to me. Ling Yi said loudly. He stretched out his right hand and pointed at everyone in the field. There are also these martial artists. Although they practice your martial arts, they have not made any progress for so many years. It used to be like this, and it is still like this now. What a stupid bunch of people. Martial arts are like people, people are growing, but they have not grown at all. The martial arts they practice is yours, but not theirs. But I'm different, I'm out of the frame you set. The martial arts I practice is my own. Therefore I am strong, and no one is my opponent. Taking a deep breath, Ling Yi calmed down and said again. I came here today just to find you. To prove it to you, to them, and to my master. I was right. Chapter 606-gravitational. Ling Yi's voice contained considerable confidence, very sharp, and he had great confidence in himself. When the people in the martial arts hall heard his rude words, they immediately became angry. Ling Yi, in front of the patriarch, you must not be rude. Arrogant and ignorant junior, you are too arrogant. The ancestor shot, you must not be an opponent. Raising his eyebrows again, Ling Yi laughed. Is it an opponent? We won't know until we fight. Then, he looked at Yang Qing. Did you say so? Patriarch. This bold behavior can be said to deceive the teacher and destroy the ancestors, too rude and arrogant. Ling Yi's self-confidence has reached the realm of conceit. You're not good enough to shoot at you. Yang Qing took a deep look at Ling Yi. This boy was young, but he didn't have enough temperament to control it, and he was about to go astray. Saya, just pack him up and throw it out. He waved his hand indifferently, and Yang Qing was too lazy to answer. Oh, is there anyone else? Patriarch, I've been to all the martial arts gyms, but no one has ever been my opponent. Ling Yi looked at Yang Qing, his eyes full of dissatisfaction. He didn't believe that someone would still be his opponent. The new martial arts he created, combined with his strength, had almost reached the top of the earth, and it was impossible for anyone to beat him. Saya stood out without saying a word. His tall figure was like a tower, his expression was cold, and his momentum was very cold at this moment. A pair of eyes, even more filled with anger, stared at the young man in front of him. How dare you dare to be rude to the great elder? I don't know how high the sky is. Saya shouted angrily. The majestic momentum actually set off a gust of wind in the martial arts hall, making everyone change color. Ling Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and his heart shook. This big man has never been seen before. Is he a master? Saya's stature is burly, his muscles are well proportioned, and he has a strong energy aura. Standing 30 meters away, he has already given Ling Yi great pressure. This is the pressure on the spiritual level, which proves that the other party has absolutely different reactions. I didn't expect Wu Qingliu to have such a master. Ling Yi became serious, stopped talking, stepped forward, and assumed a fighting stance. Let's start. Saya, be careful, don't hurt him. Yang Qing said softly. Hearing Yang Qing's words, Saya's face suddenly became extremely cold, his eyes spit fire, and his mouth roared. I tell you, little brat, what I can't tolerate the most is someone being rude to the great elder. Today, I'm going to maim you. Saya strode forward, a step of 10 meters, just 3 steps, he was already in front of the other. The threatening wind made Ling Yi's face change in an instant, and the wind brought about by the big man's movement, it was so blown that he couldn't even stand. How much power and speed can it take to bring such a terrifying wind? This big guy is amazing. I didn't even see him when he moved. It's terrifying. It's unimaginable that such a person is unknown in the martial arts hall on weekdays. Everyone in the martial arts hall saw that it was only a flash of effort. Saya had already arrived in front of Ling Yi. The strong wind blew the latter back a few steps, and Saya took a big step to follow, and a punch suddenly slammed out. Roar! The wind roared, and a small whirlwind of punches surrounded the front of Saya's fist. This is Feng Chen. This big man is too powerful. Everyone exclaimed, and the heart was impressed by Saya at this moment. Such power is really terrifying. At this moment, Ling Yi's complexion changed greatly, his heart flashed, and countless fists flowed through his heart. I have practiced all of Wu Qingliu's boxing techniques, and finally found that if I practice one of them alone, I cannot achieve the most complete martial arts realm at all. So, I merged them all into one, and I was shocked to find that I actually walked out. Wu Qingliu was created based on natural phenomena such as lightning, flame, wind, river, sea, etc., but, beyond them, after going out, I saw the universe. There is a terrifying gravitational force between the stars. And gravity is the force of the universe. This is the most powerful boxing technique, and it is also my Ling Yi's boxing technique, martial arts. Ling Yi's figure retreated, his eyes flashed, and countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Big man, your strength has indeed surpassed me too much, I can't measure it at all, but your understanding of martial arts and Wu Qingliu is too far from mine. The moment the punch was swung, it suddenly trembled, Ling Yi's right fist turned into a phantom, and then accelerated in an instant, heading towards Saya. At the same moment, Yang Qing, who was watching the battle at will, suddenly shrank his pupils. This kid is really a martial arts genius. Even Yang Qing was shocked when he noticed Ling Yi's punch, because even he didn't practice martial arts to such a level. However, this kid has achieved it. This is the gravitational force of the universe. Bang! In an instant, Ling Yi and Saya's fists collided in the martial arts hall. Between the two, even if Saya has gathered his strength too. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The limit, which can be played at will, exceeds Ling Yi countless times. Logically speaking, Ling Yi couldn't take any punch from Saya at all. How can an egg collide with a stone? However, at the moment when the two fists collided, the expressions of the two people changed at the same time. This kid. Saya's pupils shrank, and he was shocked to find that his body was pulled by an invisible force of attraction, pulling him forward, and the balance of the soles of his feet was instantly disrupted. It almost collapsed. It's gravity. After striding forward, Sai couldn't control his balance. At this moment, his body leaned forward. Ling Yi's expression also changed greatly, and a surging force followed his fist and instantly swept through his whole body, causing his whole body to tremble. What a terrifying power! This big man. So strong. But in an instant, Ling Yi had already controlled his strength, and then his eyes narrowed, his body turned, his left foot was the axis, his waist twisted, his right leg was lifted, and he turned suddenly towards the back. Then, swept away with one leg. Chapter 607-Jump Out. This foot brought a strong wind and was very fierce, even a stone could be turned into powder by his foot. Ling Yi has an outstanding talent for martial arts, but since he was 4 years old, he has been practicing martial arts under the guidance of his master, and his body is also extremely terrifyingly polished. This unexpected kick can win against any opponent. Ling Yi really thought so. No one escaped his kick at all. He seemed to have seen the big man, kicked by him, and then rolled and lost. It's been decided. Roaring lowly, Ling Yi's eyes were extremely bright. But at the same moment, he saw that Saya, who was still leaning forward and bent over and about to fall to the ground, suddenly turned around, his face was full of cold and ferocious terror. In an instant, his heart pounded. How is this possible? A heavy voice with monstrous anger entered his ears. It was Saya's voice. Boy, you are so arrogant. Immediately following, Seiya stretched out his hand, and his big hand stretched out towards him, like a raging flood, which could not be stopped at all. Crack! This big hand directly pulled Ling Yi's right leg back, causing a trace of pain on the latter's face. Too much power. Totally unstoppable. However, this is not over. The forward trend of the big hands has not been hindered at all. Ling Yi's full-strength leg was like a wisp of dust. Seiya's right hand stretched out, and just squeezed it easily. Ling Yi felt a pain in his head, and the next moment he rose into the air, but Seiya grabbed his temple and lifted it up. Inevitably, Ling Yi's heart had a trace of fear, but he was worthy of being a true genius. At this juncture, his feet suddenly kicked towards Seiya's body. Bang bang bang. A series of voices came out. Seiya defended with his left hand, and the rebound force caused Ling Yi to kick 10 feet, and his whole body was in severe pain. It's so powerful. How can he be so powerful? Ling Yi couldn't believe it. It was only 10 blows, and the other party had nothing to do. On the other hand, his legs were about to break. You are too weak. So weak, yet dare to be arrogant in front of the great elder, so disrespectful. It's just courting death. Seiya's low words sounded, serious and cold, followed by a dazzling light flashing. This is Qigong Wave. With one hand, you can send out Qigong waves. Ling Yi bowed his head, and was shocked to see the big man's left hand flickering with light. A light blue sphere was rapidly formed, and there was a dazzling light. The hot temperature and energy made his clothes and black hair tremble. Involuntarily, Ling Yi became frightened. He's going to kill me. Although Ling Yi is young, he has indeed experienced a lot of hardships in his martial arts challenge, and he can naturally see the killing intent on the other side. The dazzling light became more and more intense. Ling Yi clearly saw the big man and pushed the Qigong wave in his left hand towards his own mouth. This guy actually wanted to release the Qigong wave at such a close distance. Let go of me. What do you want? Ling Yi roared loudly, sweat dripping from his forehead. Seiya ignored him at all. The Qigong wave in his left hand suddenly advanced, and was about to press hard on Ling Yi's body, but at this moment, Yang Qing on the side spoke. Okay, Seiya. The Qigong wave stopped suddenly, clinging to Ling Yi's right side, and the scorching high temperature instantly turned his front side into powder. Immediately after, the Qigong wave slowly dissipated. Seiya threw his right hand at will, and Ling Yi was thrown in front of Yang Qing. Hoo 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 hoo. Ling Yi exhaled loudly and was still in shock. Looking at the big man standing behind him, his heart was full of fear. He had never seen such a terrible guy. Now, do you understand your level? Yang Qing's voice came from above him. At this time, Ling Yi just realized that in his current state, he was kneeling on his knees, and he was in a state of embarrassment. His throat moved, but he was speechless no matter what. Seiya walked over with a few big steps, then gave Ling Yi a cold look and said, Elder, why didn't you kill him? Yang Qing glared at Seiya. Shut up for me, you almost made a fool of yourself, but you're too embarrassed to speak here. Seiya touched his head and did not dare to speak. He just looked at Ling Yi who was kneeling on the ground below, and his eyes became even colder. Do you understand? Yang Qing asked Ling Yi again. Zushi, Ling Yi said with difficulty, his head lowered very low. Hee, don't rush to call me patriarch, I can't accept you as a genius. Yang Qing waved his hand to stop him. I was wrong, Ling Yi said embarrassedly. Seiya's strength, his weakness, gave him a huge blow, and also made him realize that he has not yet reached the invincible state. He's still a long way off. In this way, the second half of the year seems to be the start of the world's #1 martial arts meeting. If you go to this martial arts meeting, if you perform well on the field, I can make an exception to accept you as a disciple. Yang Qing thought for a moment and said. Big elder, Seiya said in shock, looking at the kid kneeling on the ground with envy. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Ling Yi was shocked, and then burst into tears. He swept all the Wuqingliu martial arts halls, but the patriarch didn't even bother with him, but gave him another chance. He clearly knew the strength of Wuqingliu's martial arts hall, and even the imperial army had to give them face. Anyone who came to play in the hall in the past would end up miserably. Thank you, patriarch. Ling Yi will definitely get a good ranking and make a name for me, Wuqingliu. Yang Qing nodded and left. Soon, he and Yi Qi returned home. It has to be said that although Ling Yi's original combat power is not strong, his understanding of martial arts did give Yang Qing a hint of inspiration. After returning to the bedroom, Yang Qing crossed his knees and closed his eyes, and began to understand. His realm was much higher than Ling Yi's. When Ling Yi used that gravitational martial art, he already knew everything about the latter. Wuqingliu is derived from all things in nature and extends upwards. That is all things in the universe, and gravity is also one of them. In addition to gravity, there are also electromagnetic forces, acting forces, and so on. Yang Qing's eyes flickered, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Now that there is inspiration, it means that his martial arts will advance to a new realm again. Jumped out of the stars and came to the universe. Chapter 608-expect. Martial arts is different from combat power, it is the use of one's own energy and combat power. The deeper the comprehension of martial arts, the stronger the combat power that can be exerted under the same realm. The manifestation of strength is not only on its own energy and combat effectiveness. He is determined by a combination of personal psychological quality, martial arts skills, combat experience and other factors. At this moment, Yang Qing's martial arts has risen to a new level, and his combat power has naturally also increased. His eyes flashed with joy, and I have to say that he separated the martial arts hall at that time and used the power of everyone on the earth to practice martial arts, which was indeed very effective. Although it has been a long time, up to now, it has made him gain a lot. The palms opened, trembled suddenly, and immediately, a strange attraction force radiated out, heading in all directions. In the small bedroom, everything trembled violently, and with a rumbling sound, went towards his palm. Different from Ling Yi's strength, this gravitational skill was used by Yang Qing, and the power was extraordinary. In an instant, everything in the house was damaged and turned into a mass of matter that appeared in his palm. Then, he shook his palm again, the mass of matter was pulled into a piece of powder, twisted and dissipated here. It's a good skill, and more importantly, it has broadened my horizons of martial arts. Yang Qing sighed and said, he has a high level of realm, and he learned Ling Yi's skills at a glance. Different people will naturally have different powers when using them. This move, after his hand was improved, became more powerful. If it is used against the enemy, it is almost impossible for the enemy to guard against and can play a key role. 3 days later, he extended the gravitational skill, which was powerful and could add gravitational force to enhance his attack power. On the same day, he called Saya. Elder. Saya looked at Yang Qing expectantly. Shaking his head, Yang Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really didn't know what to say to Saya. But the heart is also quite fond of this guy. Saiyans are naturally belligerent. Saiyan has such a character, which means that he is qualified to embark on a stronger path. I will teach you for a month, and I hope you can take it to the next level. Hey, thank you great elder. Saya laughed. Yang Qing smiled and nodded. For a month, Yang Qing explained martial arts to Saya, and he fought with him every day to supplement Saya's shortcomings. In a short period of time, Saya's combat power rose again. Elder, that kid named Ling Yi, do you really want to accept him as your apprentice? Saya asked curiously while cultivating. With such a weak strength, he can make you suffer a bit. What do you think his talent is? Yang Qing did not answer, but asked instead. Saya was stunned for a moment, then scratched his head awkwardly. That kid's talent is indeed very scary. Anyone who thinks about it, Ling Yi's combat power is more than 100, but it can make Saya suffer a little. Even if Saya has suppressed a lot of his strength, it is very scary. That kid is really good. Saya had to admit to this, but he's just an earthling. In Saya's mind, Yang Qing is almost the #1 powerhouse in the universe. It is inconceivable for such a person to accept a weak human being as his apprentice. Shaking his head, Yang Qing exhaled. Sometimes, the strong are not determined by race. After a pause, his eyes turned sharp again. If it is, then the whole rule, it's up to me to break it. Saya was stunned, only to feel that Yang Qing at this moment was full of self-confidence. Yang Qing really likes Ling Yi as a whole. It is true that young people have edges and corners, just remove them, let him know how to be humble, know how to be strong on the outside, always strive for progress, and maintain some justice in the heart, this is enough. While Yang Qing was teaching Saya, a 14-year-old boy had already packed his bags and was ready to go. Master, this time, I have to go. Ling Yi bowed and said respectfully to the old man in front of him. The #1 martial arts society in the world has always brought together the strongest people on the entire earth. Although they can understand themselves faster and enhance their abilities in battle, the danger is even greater. Yun Bai said hesitantly, still I am very worried about Ling Yi. Master, this is my only chance. That guy named Saya is very strong. I can't be his opponent at all. Only by worshipping the ancestors as my master and letting him teach me martial arts can I have a chance. Ling Yi's eyes were very sharp. That big man, terrifying speed, exaggerated strength, and even the gesture of sending out qigong waves with one hand, was deeply imprinted in his mind, making it impossible for him to forget it for the rest of his life. Powerful, too strong. He had never seen such a powerful guy. How on earth can I surpass that guy? Ling Yi has always been confident, but at this moment, he became confused. This also strengthened his determination to participate in this world's #1 martial arts meeting and get a good ranking. But Yun Bai was still worried. Don't worry, Master, I have only lost this time since I was a child, and I won't lose again in the future. Ling Yining said. Then, he turned around and walked away from his home. Yun Bai is his master and also his grandfather. He had no family since he was a child. It was Yun Bai who adopted him and brought him up. On the way, Ling Yi did not carry any money. He traveled alone and only brought his own change of clothes. Jungle He. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Go through it alone, leaving behind the corpses of wild beasts. On the way, someone robbed. He fought the injustice, eliminated the bad people, and won the help of many good people. 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Ling Yi's combat power did not seem to have improved much along the way, but his mood was rapidly improving. On this day, looking at everyone who looked at him with a smile appeared on Ling Yi's face. These are the people he has helped before. He seemed to understand the thoughts of the young man who was sitting in the chair and never shot from the beginning to the end. Patriarch, let me travel the rivers and mountains to improve my realm. He feels that his spirit has been purified, his will has been condensed, and his soul seems to be sublimated. This represents his foundation, which has been built quite firmly. Ling Yi's talent is indeed very good. He can quickly achieve results that others have to experience to achieve. The #1 martial arts club in the world. I'm looking forward to it even more. Chapter 609_boring. Along the way, Ling Yi has gone through a lot in silence, and he is growing rapidly. His combat skills may not have improved much, but his heart has become more and more calm, and his state of mind has become higher and higher. In the face of many things, he will comprehend and think with his heart, and if this goes on, he will not be too over the top, nor will he be afraid of anything. 2 months later, Ling Yi came to the island where the #1 martial arts association in the world was held with a calm face. The martial arts meeting was very lively, and the crowd was quite dense. When he saw such an occasion, a smile appeared on his face. The people around, Wu Qingliu disciples who knew him saw him, their expressions changed immediately, and they secretly pointed at him. Look, that's Ling Yi, Wu Qingliu's genius. Legend has it that he chose the headquarters of the pavilion, but was subdued by the patriarch and ordered him to attend this world's #1 martial arts meeting. Chish, although that guy is young, his strength is extraordinary, so let's not talk nonsense. You don't know how powerful he is. He almost swept all Wu Qingliu's martial arts halls. As far as I can see, this time the #1 martial arts club in the world must be him. A group of Wu Qingliu's disciples were discussing secretly. Ling Yi's eyes flickered slightly when he heard these comments, but his heart did not waver at all. In the past, he might have been proud and angry, but at this moment, he could not cause the slightest emotional fluctuation. In a remote corner, a young man with a third eye on his forehead also heard these remarks and turned his head to Ling Yi. Tianjin Fan, that guy seems to be very powerful. Beside him, a short, cute-looking guy pointed at Ling Yi and said, "Dumplings, you're right, this one called Ling Yi is really powerful. This time, my opponent may be him." Tianjin Rice said solemnly. At the same moment, Ling Yi also felt the sight from behind, turned around and saw Tianjin Fan and Dumpling. After a moment's surprise, he nodded and greeted them. Tianjin Rice and Dumplings are also nodding in return. When the three of them swept the first side, a group of people gathered outside the venue. "Haha, Wukong, you have changed a lot during this time. Is it more powerful?" Qilin said with a big laugh. A mortal turtle was standing beside him. His eyes swept around under his sunglasses, looking for a big beauty, and after finding it, his saliva immediately flowed out. This group of people has been together for a long time, including Sun Wukong, Qilin, Yamucha, Bulma, and so on. This time the world's #1 martial arts meeting. Wukong, are you confident? Bulma said with a smile. No problem. After hard training, I have become stronger. Sun Wukong said with a confident smile. Afterwards, everyone went to sign up, then looked for a place to live, had a big meal, and began to rest, waiting for the start of the game. Ling Yi also picked up a pen and wrote his name, then walked towards a corner. He has very little money, and it is not enough to support him to live here. So, he looked for a big tree on his own, jumped up, half lay on the tree, and began to rest. During this period of time, he was hiking, and when he encountered rivers and seas, he swam over with his hands. When he was hungry, he picked wild fruits and killed animals to eat. He has long been accustomed to such a life close to nature, and here, he has a deeper understanding of all the martial arts of Wu Qingliu. The competition was held a day later, and Ling Yi walked around to see how powerful the other players were. After looking around, he nodded secretly. Those who can participate in the world's #1 martial arts club must be considered masters on Earth. They practice martial arts, exercise themselves, and even if their bodies are not as good as other warriors in the universe, they have more tricks. In the afternoon of the second day, two figures came here. Compared with the dense crowd and the lively voices, the arrival of these two people seemed very ordinary. Elder, we really want to be late. Looking at the many workers of the world's #1 martial arts society who are preparing the venue, Saya said. It hasn't started yet, we are not too late. Yang Qing said with a smile. Where's that kid Ling Yi? Saya asked. Looking around, Saya remembered very clearly the guy who made him embarrassed. He also admired this kid in his heart. Such a weak combat power could actually make him suffer. You must know that even in the universe, there are very few powerful people who can fight with him, but this kid did it. It can only be said that it is incredible. Don't rush to find it. You will naturally be able to see him when the competition starts. Yang Qing said with a smile. Afterwards, the two went to a high-end hotel to rest. They have enough money, so naturally they don't need to be like Ling Yi. After a good night's sleep, the world's #1 martial arts club finally started today. It was still the host who wore a black suit and sunglasses at the opening, and followed the opponents on the stage one by one. With his eyes closed, Yang Qing sat in the auditorium to rest his mind, and Saya looked down boredly. These people are too weak, and their moves are rotten, and there is no merit at all. Boring, boring, so boring, I really want to slap them to death. Mad, is this also called fighting? Soft, weak, with a trace of killing intent. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. None, I can't stand it anymore. Seiya kept complaining, making the audience who were watching with gusto glared at him, but Seiya was tall and sturdy, but these people were helpless. What are you looking at? Is what I said wrong? Facing the eyes of everyone, Seiya scolded back rudely. After the game continued for a while, Seiya's eyes suddenly lit up. Hey, is that kid? Hearing Seiya's voice, Yang Qing also opened his eyes. He looked at the competition stage, but saw a familiar voice. With fluffy hair, a red martial arts uniform, a golden hoop stick on his back, and a big smile on his face, it is Sun Wukong. The Saiyan who forgot his identity. Saiyan's tone was a little angry. I'll see, what's so strange about him? Then, Seiya held his hands and looked down. Chapter 610 Who is stronger? On the competition stage, Sun Wukong stood opposite his opponent. The opponent's face was solemn, while Sun Wukong had a smile on his face. After the host announced the start, Sun Wukong politely bowed and saluted. But his opponent, seeing this opportunity, suddenly accelerated, and slashed towards him. Stupid boy, how dare you be so careless in battle? Seiya said angrily. Yang Qing also nodded. Sun Wukong's biggest weakness is indeed this. He is very easy to relax and give others an opportunity. Of course, the battle soon ended. Sun Wukong is much stronger than the opponent, but with a flick of his body, he easily dodged the opponent's attack, followed by a backhand blow, sending the opponent off the competition stage. Sun Wukong fought neatly, and finally let the discerning people see the difference, and they all looked at him in shock. This kid is amazing. I have a hunch that he must be the biggest dark horse in this competition. Have you forgotten? A few years ago, there was him in the #1 martial arts club in the world. At that time, he was already in the top 8, or was he in the top 4? Everyone started talking, but Sun Wukong saluted the audience below and walked to the backstage with a smile. After Sun Wukong retreated, the three-eyed Tianjin Rice came up. Coldly, Tianjin Fan also solved his opponent very simply, and his vicious shot left a deep impression on the enemy and the audience. This kid's combat power is not much worse than that of Sun Wukong. Seiya said with a condensed look, and then said with hatred that iron is not steel. This kid is too bad. As a Saiyan, he can't even beat an earthling. Yang Qing just shook his head and smiled, but he didn't say much. There was no need to say much about how powerful the last Sun Wukong was. Of course, Sun Wukong in this time and space died of a heart attack, but it goes without saying. Afterwards, Ling Yi came on the court, and Seiya's eyes widened again. Elder, it's that kid Ling Yi. He seems to have changed a bit, his temperament has changed. Seiya said. Yang Qing nodded, his eyes full of approval. He could naturally see that the kid on the competition stage had undergone a huge change after experiencing that defeat. The one who appeared on the competition stage at this time, and the arrogant Ling Yi that day, were like two people. Soon, Ling Yi also dealt with his opponent neatly, and his battle caused waves of exclamations again. Who is this kid, and where did it come from? A mortal turtle stood under the stage, and he was also dignified. He could naturally see Ling Yi's strength. His name is Ling Yi, and he is a talented young man from Wu Qingliu Martial Arts Academy. Legend, this guy swept almost the entire Wu Qingliu. Wu Qingliu. A mortal Gui was stunned for a moment, then remembered that young, powerful and mysterious young man a few years ago, and couldn't help murmured, as that person's disciple. When he looked at the competition stage again, Immortal Turtle's face was a little complicated. It seems that Wukong is in trouble this time. First, Tianjin Fan, the apprentice of Crane Immortal, and then Ling Yi, a talented young man from Wu Qingliu. I have to say that it is not certain whether Sun Wukong can win the first martial arts tournament this time. At the same time, Immortal Crane's expression became serious. The skill of that kid on the stage is probably not inferior to mine. How on earth did this kid cultivate? Could it be that he is really a genius like the legend? At this moment, Ling Yi walked out of Wu Qingliu and was watched by all the martial artists all over the world, and he was secretly jealous of this kid. The battle was going on quickly, and in just one afternoon, the top 8 had come out. Ling Yi, Sun Wukong, Tianjin rice, dumplings and others are impressively listed. After another round of refreshes, the top 4 were born. Ling Yi and 3 people occupied 3 seats. During the break, the 3 met at the back of the competition stage. "You two are so strong," Sun Wukong exclaimed in admiration, causing Ling Yi and the 2 to be taken aback for a moment, then turned around. "Sun Wukong?" Ling Yi asked with a smile. Tianjin fan stared coldly at Sun Wukong. "Well, I really hope to have a fight with both of you," Sun Wukong said happily. "There will be a chance, but you will lose, it must be you," Tianjin fan said with a cold face. Sun Wukong was stunned for a moment, then laughed. "I will definitely not lose." One had a cold face, the other had a smile on his face. In just a moment, the 2 faced each other, causing Ling Yi, who was standing beside him, to be instantly ignored. The final started on the second day. Ling Yi and either of the 2 did not have a round, and they met the other of the semifinals. Destiny changed. This one in the top 4 was not anyone from the original book, but his strength was outstanding. However, when the battle started, Ling Yi finally showed his strongest side. The martial arts are endless. Above nature is the universe. The universe travels all things and is invincible. This is my way, my boxing. The 2 ran fast and collided in an instant. In an instant, Ling Yi's opponent's expression changed, and then he was pulled by an inexplicable attraction. He lost his balance under his feet, stepped forward and almost fell. At the next moment, when he wanted to control his body and counterattack, Ling Yi had already vacated and swept across. Bang! This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The dull voice came out, and a strong force came from the opponent's body. At the same time, the pulling force was even heavier. It was a whoosh, and flew out of the competition stage, landing heavily on the outside world. The short hand-to-hand battle made the hosts and audience watching the battle below look sluggish. "This guy's boxing skills, people of the same level, it is difficult to compete with him," Sai said with a sullen voice. Even he suffered from that kind of boxing. It is conceivable that the martial arts cultivation of that guy is indeed terrifying. Ling Yi's wonderful battle immediately ignited the audience, causing the audience to roar loudly. Yang Qing looked at the battle just now and nodded silently. Ling Yi's battle was almost exactly the same as Sai's rhythm at that time. But today's opponent, when used, is more coherent and weirder than before. It can be seen that Ling Yi has improved to the next level for the unique boxing technique he has learned. Immediately after, the battle between Sun Wukong and Tianjin Fan also began. These 2 people, who is stronger? Ling Yi clasped his hands and looked at the competition stage, his eyes flickering. Chapter 611-Piccolo. On the competition stage, the battle between Sun Wukong and Tianjin Fan is actually no different from the original. The 2 showed their profound martial arts, their reaction speed and martial arts skills all made people's eyes shine, and many audiences were shocked. The battle between the 2 has basically continued to the same result, staggering each other on the ring, rising and falling. At the last moment, it was Tianjin Fan who won. This result is actually no different from the original. "This kid, it's too embarrassing for a Saiyan." Saiyan grinned and snorted coldly. To him, it was a shame that a Saiyan would lose to an Earthling. It is precisely because he experienced rich experiences that others cannot experience when he was young that he will be so strong in the future. Yang Qing said thoughtfully. Saya didn't understand what Yang Qing meant, but he just snorted and said nothing. Suddenly, Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and his eyes were fixed on a certain corner. "Saya, no matter what happens later, it's as if you didn't see it." In the dark and remote corner, the black shadow shrouded in the black robe has arrived, and since he looks at the ring, he shows a disdainful smile. Human, what a weak fellow. Lord Demon King will surely be able to unite this world again. Under the robe, 2 pairs of scarlet eyes were exposed. The semifinals were decided, and only the finals were left, and everyone was looking forward to the final battle. But at this moment, a scream came from behind the competition stage. Murdered. The faint smell of fresh blood came out along with the smell of blood, and the expressions of everyone present changed, and an inexplicable look of confusion appeared on their faces. Immediately afterwards, a figure with blood on his hands ran out from the backstage and shouted in panic. "Come on, Kling, the Kling player has been killed." This sound once again reminded everyone present that something terrible had indeed happened. Sun Wukong, who had just experienced the battle, immediately changed his face and ran towards the background. Ling Yi's eyes flashed, and he walked towards the back. When they walked to the backstage, they immediately saw Klein lying there, staring with wide eyes, his eyes filled with fear or reluctance to let go of the world. "Keelan," Sun Wukong shouted, eyes full of anger. "Who did it?" Everyone couldn't help but say this sentence. "Elder." Saya looked at Yang Qing and asked strangely, "You already knew that?" "There's an interesting guy." Yang Qing smiled and said, "Let's just watch the show quietly. Later, we have more important things." Yeah, Saya didn't understand what was more important, but he strictly followed Yang Qing's orders. In the background, just as everyone was immersed in the panic and doubts of someone's death, a green figure suddenly appeared. Ling Yi's eyes flashed, he took a step forward, and shouted, "Who is it?" Just as he drank it out, the green figure suddenly flashed, and when it came to him, the claws came with a strong wind and came quickly. So strong. Ling Yi's face immediately condensed, and then, his fist clenched, and a punch suddenly slammed out. Bang! The two collided with one punch. Ling Yi didn't understand, the person trembled and took 3 steps back. "Haha, the great demon King Piccolo has reappeared in the world, and you are all in endless panic." The green figure has a strange appearance, completely different from humans, like another strange race at all. Everyone looked at the guy who suddenly appeared here, and their expressions changed slightly. Immediately following, Sun Wukong rushed up angrily. But he was blocked by the green figure, and then he slipped, got up and walked, and the wings behind him flew into the air. "Prepare to accept panic, stupid humans." The strange beast-like creature made a mocking sound, then turned and left here. "Don't go." Sun Wukong shouted loudly, but couldn't catch up. "Don't chase, that guy is not human at all, it's weird." Ling Yi walked up and said loudly. Then, he turned his eyes and looked at the crane immortal and turtle immortal who had already changed color. "You two, do you know where that guy came from?" Ling Yi had noticed the change in the faces of the 2 old men when he was young. Immortal Turtle's face became complicated, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Bick. If he heard correctly, that guy, what he just said was the Great Demon King Piccolo. The Great Demon King Piccolo was the invincible Great Demon King who appeared when my teacher was alive. We fought against that guy together with the teacher. In the end, the teacher paid the price with his life, and just sealed the guy with the magic seal wave. The Turtle Immortal slowly told everyone the story of the year. What happened next was no different from the original. This is this, for one person, Ling Yi's participation. After Sun Wukong defeated Tianjin Fan, he began to grow up rapidly. Kalanta, Chao Shenchui, let the potential in his body be tapped again. The rest of the people also scattered away from the world's #1 martial arts club. The birth of the Great Demon King Piccolo caused panic in the whole world, making it impossible to hold the world's #1 martial arts club. 3. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The Queen of Heaven, the Yi family in the Western capital. Yang Qing picked up the tea in his hand, blew it lightly, and took a sip. His eyes were calm, and the whole person seemed very comfortable, but the outside world was already chaotic. "Elder, Don't we care about everything about that Namekian? Saya said anxiously. It doesn't matter, Yang Qing said lightly. But he has already hit our door. Saya's eyes spit fire and pointed out, I really want to slap that weak and scumbag guy to death. Yang Qing shook his head, but remained silent. Boom. At this moment, there was a sound like muffled thunder outside, and then Saya turned to look out the window, and saw that on the other side of the western capital, the fire was soaring into the sky, and the mushroom cloud like a bomb slowly rose. This arrogant dead old man. Saya clenched his fists. The explosion outside was caused by the great demon King Piccolo. With one blow, he destroyed another suburb of the western capital. At this time, Yi Qi's footsteps also sounded. Saya's eyes lit up and greeted Yi Qi. Chapter 612-2 week. Compared to Yang Qing's ignorance of the disaster in the western capital, Yi Qi would definitely be more anxious. Saya thought so in his heart, so he excitedly greeted the former. Qing, that big demon King Piccolo is about to destroy the world. Sure enough, the next moment I heard Yi Qi's flustered voice, Saya immediately turned to look at Yang Qing, his eyes radiating. The boiling fighting intent in his body was about to rush out, letting a monkey jump around in front of him, and Saya felt very uncomfortable all over his body. A so weak Namekian, so arrogant. This is the idea of Saya's heart. In short, it is him, itching. Since following Yang Qing, everything about Saiyan has changed. His body is more powerful, his combat power is improving every day, and he can even change into a Super Saiyan. Strangely, though, the battles are getting less and less frequent. A Saiyan without fighting is like a flower without sunlight. Without rain, the ground will dry up, and the flower will decay. How miserable is this? Although the great demon King Piccolo is also a scum, he is much stronger than other earthlings, and it is enough to understand his war intentions. Miss Yi Qi, the great demon King Nabok, if I make a move, I can end him with one move. Saya said. Yang Qing rolled his eyes, glanced at Saya, and immediately told the latter to shut up. Then he looked at the anxious Yi Qi and said, Don't worry, someone will naturally deal with him. But now 5 cities in the world have been devastated, and the eastern suburbs of the western capital have also been completely destroyed by that great devil, and many people have died. What the hell are we going to do? Yi Qi said in a panic. It's okay, you will be safe here, Yang Qing said with a smile. Yi Qi still didn't believe it. The whole world was watching the scene of the great demon King Piccolo fighting. He was able to launch a Qigong wave that instantly destroyed a city, which was simply unimaginable. Even when the army sets out, there is nothing to do with him. Such a person can't imagine it at all. She had never seen such a powerful creature before, and now the whole earth was in a panic. Just when everyone was immersed in the fear of the great demon King Piccolo, a golden streamer suddenly burst out of the sky and flew towards the place where the great devil Piccolo was located. He has black hair, a crimson martial arts uniform, and with a determined expression on his face, he is flying fast. At the same time, a 14-15-year-old boy walked out step by step and came to the front of the great demon King Piccolo. The old Piccolo's eyes widened immediately when he saw that the person who came was a teenager. Are you here to die? Yes, but I'm here to kill you. Ling Yi's eyes narrowed, his eyes full of fighting intent. Facing the great demon King Piccolo with his own eyes, he seemed to be facing a huge mountain as high as 10,000 feet. He saw his own insignificance and the strength of others. It is unbelievable that such a powerful organism could exist. But because of this, it is more worth fighting, isn't it? He was nervous, but more excited, facing the excitement of unknown masters. This made him tremble and tremble all over, and his body involuntarily strode forward. After a few steps, he stood up and assumed an attacking stance. The arrogant boy. Big Demon King Bik let out a cold sweat with disdain, pointed his finger, and the dazzling purple light flickered, and he was already in front of Ling Yi in the blink of an eye. The latter's complexion changed greatly, the speed of the ray was unexpectedly fast, he hurriedly dodged, but was still wiped to the corner of his clothes, but with a stab, that corner of the clothes had turned into nothingness. And the ray fell behind him, making a loud bang. It's so powerful. It turned out to be a qigong bomb. Ling Yi's face changed continuously, and his figure kept dodging. The great demon King Nabok just clicked his fingers, and rays of rays came from his hand, bombarding Ling Yi's back, making a sky-high explosion. No, I have to get close to him, otherwise, I won't be able to attack him at all. Ling Yi's eyes flickered, and his figure continued to dodge, but this time, he moved ahead consciously. Seeing Ling Yi's actions, a sneer appeared on the big demon King Piccolo's face. The over-the-top guy. He was still pointing straight ahead, emitting purple rays. However, his face was full of randomness. In his heart, he did not regard Ling Yi as an opponent at all. Gradually, Ling Yi was 10 meters closer to the great demon King Piccolo. At this moment, Ling Yi's eyes narrowed suddenly. It's right now. Ling Yi strode forward, grabbed his right hand, and instantly became ethereal, and a strange power appeared in his palm. Huh! The light of the great demon King Pic was still emitting, but this time, Ling Yi did not dodge, but rushed forward, his right hand slammed into the explosive ray with a punch. Buzz! The air suddenly trembled, and the ray trembled, twisted and shot towards both sides. At this moment, a look of surprise appeared on the face of the great demon King Piccolo. How? Just as he was stunned for a moment, Ling Yi had already jumped up, and with just one step, it was already in front of him, and then he punched. Die! This punch, Ling Yi used all his strength. However, at the next moment, his expression changed drastically. One of the hands of the great demon King Piccolo had appeared on his wrist at some point, and then grabbed it fiercely. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Crack! As if being grabbed by an incomparably powerful force, Ling Yi was unable to break free for a while. Such power! At this moment, Ling Yi's eyes seemed to see a majestic mountain again, a mountain that could not be read at all. In a trance, he remembered the feeling of fear and powerlessness when he fought against Saya. He turned one foot and slammed towards the chin of the big devil Piccolo, but with just one movement, the punch of the big devil Piccolo had already hit him heavily in the stomach. Cough! Ling Yi's face changed greatly, and he spat out a mouthful of blood, only to feel that his internal organs were smashed into pieces and almost all shattered. So strong. Heart trembling said this sentence. At this moment, he clearly saw the gap between himself and the other party. Like a stone and a mountain, it is impossible to cross. Too weak. At this time, the disdainful words of the great demon King Pic also came out, and he kicked his stomach heavily, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood again and rolled to the ground. Chapter 613 _ He is God. Exodus, Yi family. Elder, this kid is dying. Let me save him, Saya said loudly. What's the hurry? Do you think I can't see what you're thinking? Yang Qing glanced at Saya, and then he said solemnly, Stay here, we have more important things to do. What's more important? What's that? Saya said suspiciously, but when he saw Yang Qing's face showing a serious look, he didn't dare to ask again. Yi Qi looked at the bedroom. The mirror image created by Yang Qing was full of worry. This mirror image is showing the scene of Ling Yi fighting with the great demon King Pic. At this moment, Yang Qing hesitated. Just now, as if a stream of light flashed across his mind, his whole body was shocked. In that instant, the blood of his body Saiyan fighting was boiling, and the whole person was shaking with excitement. He felt that a new powerful breath was born, and this breath was born suddenly, but the breath contained in it made Yang Qing slightly change color. It's not that this breath is so powerful at the moment, it's just that the strong potential and coercion contained in it makes people unable to help but fear. And this feeling is very close to him. This means that the Zanai plan that has been studied for about 5 years has been successful. At the same time, in the basement of the Yi family, a group of experimenters looked at the woman whose stomach was bulging in the nutrient tank, all with excited expressions on their faces. Success, we are about to succeed. No, It has already succeeded. As long as this new little guy is born, we will create a miracle. All the perfect genes that we have been researching in the past 5 years, based on the genes of the Earth people and the Saiyans, have built a new spiral structure, which are all fused together. This is simply the best race. His learning ability, talent, and strength will all be perfect, close to the gods. Everyone shouted excitedly, and they almost jumped up one by one. No, he is a god. Tanis stood at the front, looking at the computer data in front of the nutrition tank, excitedly said. Such data is simply too perfect. He has never seen such perfect genes, surpassing the people of the Earth by countless times. It's just that he was so perfect when he was just a baby, it's hard to imagine how powerful he will be in the future. He will be the most powerful warrior. Whoever masters him will create a miracle. Then, his eyes narrowed, and he turned his head and said to the people behind him. The fastest, how long will he be born? Half a year, a month. He is a month longer than the normal human gestation period, which is 10 months. The researcher said with a look of certainty. 10 months. Tanis muttered, and then became excited again. It's only a month away, and we're about to succeed. Nutrients sink, there are constantly bubbles coming out. In the belly of the woman with her eyes closed, there is a baby that has already formed, which is quickly absorbing nutrients. There is not much strong aura coming out of his body, but the faint pressure brings people unknown feeling. It was as if the coldest warrior in the world was about to come. At this moment, the sky in the western capital was also covered with dark clouds, and there were lightning flashes intertwined, making half the sky tremble. It's really unknown. Yang Qing looked at the ceiling of the room and muttered. But after a moment, his eyes flashed with excitement again. However, it's really powerful and exciting. Can you use his power to reach the realm of Super Saiyan 3? In the state of Super 2 full power, the combat power is actually comparable to that of Kai Wangshan. If it reaches the stage of Super Saiyan 3, then it has completely surpassed the gods. At that time, his dimensional level will definitely rise again. At this time, on the side of the western capital, there was a sudden, bang bang bang, sound, which was also extremely loud, shaking half the sky. There was even a strong wind howling. In the mirror image, a short boy was fighting fiercely with the great demon King Piccolo. This kid, it's Sun Wukong. Saya said in surprise, then frowned. He looks a lot stronger than last time. How long has it been since? Is this kid so powerful? This surprised Saya a little. It's the kid at the #1 martial arts conference in the world. Yi Chi recognized it at this time. I didn't expect him to be so strong. HMPH, it's just a guy who hasn't grown up yet. As a Saiyan, it's just an existence at the bottom. Saiyan said disdainfully. And, Yi Chi pouted in disdain. Yang Qing just stared at the mirror in silence. He quickly estimated in his heart how powerful the breath that had just passed through his mind was. But in the end, he could only shake his head. It's just the breath of the newborn, it's impossible to estimate. This is indeed the case. When Sun Wukong spoke up, his weak combat power was only a single digit, but in the end, he was incredibly powerful. An hour later, half of the sky in the western capital was lit up, and a huge giant long appeared here, flashing with thunder and lightning. Big Devil Piccolo widened his eyes, looking at the fist that passed through his mouth, his eyes filled with fear and reluctance. Finally, he opened his mouth and slapped. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Spit out an egg in the distance. The battle ended with the victory of Sun Wukong. The weak Ling Yi, lying on the ground, watched the battle from the beginning to the end. His mind is full of thoughts, and he has always been the most powerful existence since the beginning of cultivation and success in martial arts. However, since the appearance of Seiya, followed by the great demon King Piccolo, and then to Sun Wukong, who defeated the great devil Piccolo, in a blink of an eye, he has been reduced to a weak side. The ups and downs of life have caused Ling Yi's mind to undergo a rapid purification. They're all powerful. And I'm still very weak. Ling Yi gritted his teeth. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of him. Ling Yi was stunned and looked up. Saya, Mouth said in surprise. Ling Yi did not expect this strong man to appear here. What a waste. Saya was not polite at all, grabbed Ling Yi directly with one hand, and carried it on his back. Elder asked me to pick you up. Ling Yi grinned, a little hurt. Chapter 614-Apprenticeship. When you go back, he will take you to a place. After you go, practice hard. If you lose the face of the elder, I will kill you. Saya spoke very rudely, but Ling Yixin was a warm current, and Yang Qing's face appeared in his mind. Grandfather. He murmured 2 words, and his feeling of loss just now was swept away. Yes, although he is weak now, he will become stronger and stronger in the future. I want to practice, I want to be stronger. Ling Yi's eyes were fierce, and his heart had a strong desire to become stronger. After Saya put Ling Yi on his shoulders, he soared into the sky and flew directly into the sky. Can you actually fly? When Ling Yi saw this scene, he was shocked again. His voice was heard by Saya, who sneered. Boy, you are still too weak and pitiful. You can't understand the realm between me and the first elder. With the gust of wind, Saya raised his speed to the limit, but after a while, he had landed from the sky and arrived at Yi Qi's house. As soon as he reached out, he pulled Ling Yi off his shoulders and threw it on the ground. Elder, I brought you here. Saya said stiffly. Ha ha. Seeing Saya's childlike expression, Yang Qing couldn't help laughing. Then he looked at Ling Yi. What did you learn from this experience? Weak. Ling Yi clenched his fists and stared into Yang Qing's eyes. I'm still too weak. Yang Qing smiled. Weakness and strength are relative. You and Sai Yabi are indeed weak, but compared with the people of the earth, you have already stood at the top level. Patriarch, I want to practice with you. Please accept me. Biting his lip, Ling Yi knelt on his knees with his forehead on the ground and shouted loudly. The feeling that Yang Qing gave him was completely different from that of the great demon King Piccolo and Seiya. The latter two were imposing, as majestic as a mountain, and could not be surpassed at all, while Yang Qing was like a cloud, high in the air, without a trace of strength, and it would not bring him any pressure. But this is the unordinary, unremarkable feeling, but it made Ling Yi understand that this patriarch sitting on the chair is probably the most terrifying person in the world. His realm has reached a realm that he cannot understand at all. Your talent is good, you can practice with me. After a while, Yang Qing's gentle voice entered his ears. In the future, you can call me master. In a word, Seiya and Ling Yi were both startled, and then the two felt completely different. Big Elder, Saya called out, do you really want to accept him as a disciple? Of course, is there a problem? Yang Qing asked suspiciously. Seiya didn't know whether it was jealousy or lust. You don't need to think too much, what I teach you is much more than those 5 guys. Then, Yang Qing said again, making Saya happy again. It is also true that he is with the great elder all day. How could those 5 guys know so much about themselves? At this time, Ling Yi, who was still kneeling on the ground, was shaking with excitement. Great, I finally lost to the ancestors, and I can finally cultivate. I want to become stronger than Sun Wukong. It can be said that the battle between Monkey King and Piccolo really left a deep impression on Ling Yi, who watched it up close. He was the most vivid to see how Sun Wukong, from a small age, defeated the great demon King Piccolo, who could not be defeated at all. What, don't you want to? At this moment, Yang Qing's voice suddenly came, which shocked Ling Yi and reacted immediately. Thank you ancestors, Ling Yi is so willing. Ling Yi said excitedly, a little incoherent. He was really excited. But it may not be a good thing to take me as a teacher. You will suffer unimaginable hardships and may even die. Be mentally prepared, otherwise, you are not qualified to be my apprentice. Yang Qing's tone was very serious, and it contained ruthlessness. Ling Yi also said seriously, I I will work hard. In order to become stronger, even if I die, I am willing. Yang Qing nodded and then said to Saya. 3 days off, and in 3 days, we'll go back to Nova. After calculating the time, he has been away from Xinxing for a while, and it is indeed time to go back and have a look. Xinxing. Ling Yi's eyes showed a hint of doubt, but he didn't ask any further. Yi Qi also looked at Yang Qing at this time. Qing, I'm going too. Yang Qing hesitated a little. Compared with the Earth, a new star is naturally much more dangerous. After all, it was just on the newly established planet, and the Saiyans were strong and could suppress people from other races, but it was obvious that Yi Qi did not. Such power. Also, gravity, first and foremost, is an important period. With Yi Qi's strength, can it withstand the gravity of a nova that is nearly 5 times greater than that of Earth? No, Nova is too dangerous for you. In the end, Yang Qing still shook his head and refused. Yi Qian was disappointed, but didn't say much. She could only blame her for being too weak. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. These 3 days, Seiya, you train him. Try your best to let him train his body so that he can initially adapt to the state of a new star. Yang Qing said to Seiya again. Saya nodded and looked at Ling Yi cruelly. Don't worry, elder, I will educate this kid well. Ling Yi's eyes were cold, and his heart was a little scared. This big guy obviously has bad intentions. After saying this, Yang Qing asked Seiya and Ling Yi to retreat, and then took Yi Qi to the laboratory. Some things are best seen in person. The gene fusion of Saiyans and Earthlings creates a new creature that looks the same as Gohan Goten, the son of Sun Wukong, but it is actually very different. Because, the biological species created by this group of mad scientists should be called artificial talents. They also looked at multiple perfect genes and incorporated them. Such a guy must have terrifying power, and at the same time, it is extremely dangerous. After leaving the underground laboratory, the two met Tanaz. Qing, did you know? This is the most perfect living organism, and he will be unimaginably powerful. I have a hunch that even the great demon King Piccolo won't be his opponent. Chapter 615_practice. He will definitely help you. As soon as he saw the two of them, Tanaz said with madness. Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and she looked at the woman in the nutrition tank. Her belly was bulging. At this time, she was already the size of a normal woman's pregnancy for 10 months. Logically, at this time, it was time for the baby to be delivered. However, the guy inside still stayed there quietly. How does the data show? Yang Qing asked. According to the combat power test you mentioned, it can be roughly judged that the combat power of the baby inside should be between 7 or 8. Quote. It's already better than adults. Tanaz said excitedly. This old scientist doesn't know the combat data of the powerful guy at all. If the baby has a 7 or 8, it has made him crazy enough and happy. Yang Qing naturally knew the power of the Saiyans, and also discovered the unusualness of this baby. According to the analysis of the breath he felt just now, he judged that the infant's combat power should be around 100,000. However, in the data test, there are only 7 and 8, which is obviously incredible. This guy will hide his strength. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed and he looked at the nutrition tank, as if he saw a baby curled up quietly inside. In a few months, he will be born. At that time, we will be able to get his data in more detail. Tanaz said happily. Months, if it is not long, it will arrive soon. His power may be a little stronger, be prepared to take precautions. Yang Qing nodded and reminded. The preparations have already been made. In fact, there is no need to worry too much. He is just a baby. At this stage, he will not be conscious. Tanaz said. When Yang Qing thought about it, it was indeed the case. When he was a baby, he had no thoughts at all. It is difficult to even speak. Afterwards, he asked for some data again and left with Yi Qi. Although the feeling is unknown, Yang Qing is still very confident that he can suppress it. After all, he is already very powerful now. When Yangqing and the two left the laboratory, Lingyi had already been taken to a training ground by Saya. After entering the training ground, Saya threw a bean to Lingyi. "Eat him and then we start training." "What is this?" Lingyi asked curiously. "Shando, eat him and your injury will recover," Saya said impatiently. "Hurry up. There are only 3 days. If you can't adapt to the new star, you will die if you go." Immortal beans, something that the elder brought back, is very magical to Saya. Lingyi nodded, and then ate the fairy beans. After a while, he looked at his whole body in surprise, only to feel that all the injuries he suffered before had really recovered, and there was no trace of scars on the surface of his body. Except for the damage to his clothes, everything else is almost the same as before the battle with Piccolo. "Then let's get started." Saya threw another piece of clothing towards Lingyi and landed heavily in front of Lingyi. "Put on this Saiyan training suit." Lingyi didn't hesitate, took off his clothes and put on this white training uniform. The moment he put it on, his expression suddenly changed again. "It's heavy." Involuntarily, Lingyi's waist bent down. "This is a training suit. Originally, I asked the guys in the laboratory to make it for training, but..." Sia paused and said with disgust, "It's too light, and it's not suitable for me at all. However, for you, it's just right." "Just right." Lingyi looked at the clothes in shock. He felt that his whole body was about to be crushed. Is this just right? The weight of the rags is roughly 3 times the gravity of the earth. If you can't even bear this weight, then, you can imagine, after going to Nova. Saya's eyes became sharp. "You will surely die. The gravity of Nova is 5 times that of Earth. This is also the aspect of us Saiyans, stronger than you Earthlings." 5 times Earth's gravity. Lingyi swallowed his saliva and didn't know what to say. Of course, what surprised him even more was that the guy in front of him still sounded like an alien. "Cultivation quickly, run 100 laps around this training ground for me." Saya pointed to the training ground. "It will kill people." Lingyi looked at the huge training ground, at least 1 kilometer down the circle, a little sluggish. "There's a pack of fairy beans here. When you feel like you're dying, just eat one. Within 3 days, you must be familiar with such a weight." Saya threw the fairy beans in front of Lingyi. "Go on, boy, you're so far away, sighingly weak." Lingyi gritted his teeth, bent down to pick up the bag of fairy beans with difficulty, then slammed it into his pocket and started to run. Become stronger. He must become stronger. And the 100 laps in front of you are the first step. Saya looked at Lingyi's slowly leaving figure, his eyes full of envy. Elder is really willing. For the sake of this kid's cultivation, he even gave 10 immortal beans. I usually want 1, and I have to ask for it for a long time. Then, he secretly took out 3 from his arms. Fortunately, I'm smart myself and kept 3. 10 in total, that kid just now. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. I ate 1, I took 3, and the rest should be fine. Lingyi was wearing training clothes and ran around the huge training ground. After a while, he only felt that his whole body was about to explode, and the sweat fell on the ground, printing a large area. Tired. So tired. My lungs are about to explode. Both legs are going to be broken. This is simply challenging the limits of the human body, and Lingyi's consciousness even began to blur. Finally, after running a dozen steps forward, he fell to the ground with a thud. Hoo-hoo. Panting violently, Lingyi felt like he was about to die. His whole body was twitching, trembling, shaking, and countless cells in his body were resisting him. Xian, Shando. Struggling, he put his hand toward the small package in his arms, but as soon as he reached it in, Lingyi shook. Isn't it a pack? Why are there only so many? However, at this time, it was too late to struggle with these issues. He pinched a bean and swallowed it. Crack. The sound of chewing sounded, Lingyi's body suddenly shook, and immediately returned to normal. Recovered. He rolled over and stood up, looking at his hands, only to feel that his body relaxed a lot. What an amazing bean. However, there are only 5 now. Can I reach my goal in 3 days? Chapter 616-habit. At this moment, even Ling Yi, who had always believed in his extraordinary talent, began to doubt. This really seems like an impossible task. Only the training suit on the real ship can feel its terrible gravity, as if it can crush a person's bones. Just walking is already very difficult, and it seems to be carrying a mountain all the time. 5. Grasping the bag in his hand, Ling Yi pursed his lips and put it in his arms, with a look of determination in his eyes. No, I have to adapt. This has to be achieved. He gritted his teeth, stepped forward, and walked forward. A recovery from the limit of life and death made his physical fitness much better than before, and Shando was very helpful to him. This time, I took another step. Compared with the previous one, it was easier, but it was still difficult. Moving slowly, Ling Yi's body was dripping with sweat, and his eyes flashed with fierce light. This tenacious spirit immediately changed Seiya's eyes slightly. This stingy aura is different. Muttering, Seiya found a place, sat down quietly, and then stared at Field Ling Yi. Gradually, time passed slowly. Ling Yi fell down a total of 78 times in the next day, but he stood up tenaciously each time. He only used the fairy beans once during the 78 times. On the second day, his speed was much faster than before. Although looking at Seiya's eyes, it is still slow like a snail. But he has come a long way since the beginning. The next day, Ling Yi was able to walk slowly. On this day, he did not rest for a second, and kept walking on foot. Compared with yesterday, this day's cultivation was even more difficult. It is easier to break the bottleneck at the beginning, but it will become more and more difficult later on. Compared with Saiyans, humans have a low start, and there are more bottlenecks that need to be broken. This is why it is difficult for humans to compare with Saiyans once they enter a realm in cultivation. They have too many bottlenecks. For example, Saiyans can span 10 meters in one step, but humans can only span 1 centimeter and 1 decimeter. This is a huge gap in talent, and it is difficult to make up for it. Hoo. At noon the next day, Ling Yi was lying on the ground, and he didn't even have the strength to blink. His heart, lungs, and internal organs seemed to be about to explode, and the cells of his entire body were shaking violently. Am I going to die? I can't move a little bit, and I can't hold the fairy beans. This time, I've reached the limit again. I seem to have overestimated my physical fitness. The strength to even move is completely gone. Ling Yi seemed to feel the rapid flow of life force in his body, but the strange thing was that he did not have any fear or tension. It seemed that this scene had already been experienced countless times in his mind. No, I'm not dead yet. I've been through this scene too much. Only this time, on the road to death, I've gone further. There is still a chance, I just need to turn back, on this road, back again, back to the bright and warm path. Buzz. His fingers trembled, and then he began to slowly stretch towards his arms. There was no movement in the rest of his body, only his hands were moving. Ling Yi is on the verge of life and death, breaking the limit of cultivation, has realized how to pour his whole body strength into his own body parts, enhance his own attack power or the use of power. This is not the same as Yang Qing's cultivation method, which allows Ling Yi to start another path of his own. With his right hand, he slowly took out the fairy bean, and then put it into his mouth. Crack. Controlling the cells of the whole body again to provide that weak and almost nothingness power, the teeth began to chew up and down, and the fairy beans were miraculously swallowed by him. Dong dong dong. The powerful beating of the heart came again, and Ling Yi was resurrected again. The next moment, he stood up slowly, his eyes shining brightly. After standing up, he lowered his head and counted the bags of fairy beans. 2 left. His eyes flashed, feeling the power that he seemed to have transformed, and a smile appeared on his face. Enough. He started to walk. This time, it was much faster than before, and it was close to the speed of a normal person. Immediately following, a smile appeared on Ling Yi's face, and he began to run quickly. Seiya looked at this scene, his eyes were a little surprised. This kid, he has adapted so quickly. Even if it's a Saiyan, it's probably not as exaggerated as him to increase his power. From the beginning to the present, he has been watching Ling Yi's progress. Every time he stood up again, Ling Yi became stronger. Maybe this kid is really as talented as the elder said. This time, Seiya also began to believe Yang Qing's judgment. One day passed quickly, and after experiencing the limit of life and death yesterday, Ling Yi crossed the bottleneck 15 times again. At this time, he was able to walk like a flying in the training ground wearing a training suit, and run as fast as a normal person. He has completely adapted to such a gravitational environment. During the process of running, he always had a light smile on his face, which seemed very casual. After experiencing the pain that was almost desperate at first, Ling Yi made progress. The goal of 100 laps has long been accomplished by him. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. At this moment, Ling Yi was standing on the field, wearing a training uniform, quickly punching, and closing his legs. The third day passed quickly, and Ling Yi still hadn't eaten the last fairy bean. He was completely used to this kind of gravity and was able to stand there and make any movements very easily. In the afternoon, Seiya finally blinked and walked over. The mountain-like figure blocked the light, and Ling Yi immediately noticed it. "Brother Seiya," he said with a smile. "Yeah," Seiya nodded solemnly, "you're almost used to it." "Well, I'm finally used to it." Ling Yi sighed, and only he knew how many times he had gone through the danger of life and death. "Very good, go back and rest today, and we will set off tomorrow." Seiya nodded. "Where are we going?" Ling Yi finally asked. He had only listened to Rising Stars before, but didn't know exactly where he was. "Nova, the hometown of the Saiyans, a new world with many strong men." Seiya's eyes narrowed and he said in a deep voice. Chapter 617-Nova Android. Ling Yi didn't know much about Xingsheng, but listening to Seiya say this, then this place must be very unusual. His eyes flashed, with some anticipation and some nervousness about the unknown. Another day passed, and the next morning, Seiya found Ling Yi. The two came to Yang Qing's room together. At this time, Yi Qi was reluctant to talk to Yang Qing. "Well, it's not like I'm not coming back, what about you?" To tell the truth, from the beginning of the two people's encounter, until now, their relationship has become more and more affectionate, and now they have reached the edge of the window paper, and they will break when they are stabbed. However, Yang Qing was worried and did not speak, and Yi Qi also seemed to be angry. If you have an idea, you don't say it, I don't say it, and it drags on like this. It's just that other people can see their situation clearly. "How long will you be going this time?" Yi Qi asked. "I really don't know." Yang Qing was stunned, then smiled bitterly. "Going to the new star this time, the first thing is to let the 5 apprentices quickly realize the method of transforming into a Super Saiyan. Secondly, he also needs to live there for a while." Seeing Seiya and Ling Yi coming over, Yang Qing patted Yi Qi and the two separated. "Are you all ready?" Yang Qing looked at Seiya, then glanced at Ling Yi and asked, "How is he?" "Should be able to get used to the environment over there." Seiya touched his head, and was a little unsure. "You'll know when you go, as long as you can't die." Yang Qing nodded. Ling Yi had a black line on his head. Between what the two said, they underestimated him too much, right? Then, Yang Qing walked towards the two of them. "Since everything is ready, let's go," Yang Qing said with a smile. "Put your hands on my shoulders, hold on tight." "Okay," Seiya said loudly. Reaching out and grabbing Yang Qing's shoulder, Ling Yi also put his hand on Yang Qing's other shoulder with a confused look. Yang Qing smiled at Yi Qi again, and then put her right hand between her eyebrows. "Huh." The air twisted, and the 3 figures disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi Qi watched the 3 of them disappear, but she was not at all surprised. She was already used to Yang Qing's mystery. New star. The planet that was once completely destroyed by albinos, after a period of repair and reconstruction at this moment, has become a magnificent emerging planet in the universe. There are high-rise buildings with different styles everywhere, and spacemen from various planets come and go. The green environment, the ocean, is also home to a variety of different creatures. Today's new star has completely got rid of the broken look at that time and transformed into a beautiful green planet. In a street, 3 figures suddenly appeared here. Arrived. Yang Qing just said it with a smile on his face, but when he saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned again. Isn't this a new star? I'm in the wrong place. Isn't it possible? I'm very familiar with the aura of a new star, so I can't go wrong. But where is this? Saya also looked at this place blankly. In his impression, Nova was a barren place. Except for the place where Saiyans lived exclusively, there were lush, dense jungles and monsters. It was impossible to have such tall buildings. The scene of high tech is displayed everywhere. The one who was completely different from the two was Ling Yi. This earthling suddenly changed his environment, and his face changed drastically. Okay, so heavy. His face was a little distorted, and he felt that the moment he came to this planet again, his whole body was about to be crushed. Much more than Earth's gravity. Ling Yi's waist was bent down, sweat dripping out. Not bad, you've gotten used to it initially. Seiya nodded, also relieved. Different gravity, air pressure, and living environment are naturally different. Ordinary people suddenly change their gravity, and it is very likely that they will directly explode and die. Great Elder, it is the Great Elder. The guy standing next to the big elder seems to be Seiya. That's right, it's Seiya. At this time, there were bursts of excited sounds from afar. Immediately after that, a stream of light rose into the sky, or came from the roadside in the distance, or flew directly down from a high-rise building, bringing gusts of wind, and came to the front of the 3 of them. It's really the Great Elder, I read it right, ha 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 1 inch. Saiyans with long tails came to Yang Qing, with excitement on their faces, and shouted loudly. That's great, the first elder is back, that guy, I see how arrogant he is. Listening to the voices of the Saiyans and looking at the smiles on their faces, Yang Qing also showed a faint smile. Hey, I ask you, how did Nova become like this? Saya asked loudly. This. The Saiyans looked at each other and became embarrassed. Say it, Saya asked eagerly. This is a long story. The Saiyans looked at each other, and one spoke. Actually, we just planned to restore the new star to the way it was before, and we also went out to find many planets or races with advanced technology. In the end, I did find it, just. As he spoke, the Saiyan began to hesitate. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Speak. This time it was Yang Qing who spoke. He had already understood something from the face of the Saiyan present and the person's mouth. It's just that we are bringing wolves into the house. These technologically advanced planetary races are not as capable of individual combat as ours. Their battleships are as fragile as paper to us. After the initial negotiations, they are very obedient and serve us. To transform our planet. Quote. But after a month, something happened. What? Saya asked eagerly. They got our genetic genes somewhere, and they actually created a group of artificial humans. Saiyan said angrily. What makes us helpless is that although this group of androids are still not as good as us in single combat effectiveness, they are numerous. After a battle, we Saiyans only fought a tie with them. Hearing this, Yang Qing's eyes flashed. The group of crazy scientists on Earth actually analyzed his genes and then created man. But according to what the Saiyans say, what this technological race has created is only a mere form, and only has the fighting power of the Saiyans, but does not have that kind of bottomless potential. Chapter 618-Logan. After a few more battles, to our shock, an extremely powerful android appeared among them. An android. Saya asked curiously. How powerful would an android be? This artificial human body seems to have a temptation called a perpetual melting furnace installed in his body. His energy is endless and his motivation is very strong. We Saiyans are singled out, and no one is his opponent. In the end, it was the combined efforts of the 5 Sons of Inheritance that defeated that guy, but did not destroy it. Because of this, they began to discuss with us to jointly develop this planet. After that, people from the universe kept coming to the new star, and after a period of time, it became like this. After silently listening to what the Saiyan said, Yang Qing's eyes became cold. Hee, that is to say, the hometown of the Saiyans was temporarily occupied by others. With a mocking laugh, the Saiyans present bowed their heads. Mad, where is that android? I'll kill him now, Saya roared angrily, and that race, all destroyed. The angry Saya involuntarily inflated the air in his body, the wind blew, and Ling Yi, who was uncomfortable beside him, was immediately blown by the wind and turned a few somersaults on the ground. The Saiyan people felt the power of Saiyan, with a look of anticipation on their faces. Yang Qing shook his head. No hurry, go to Stoyard and the others first. Hearing Yang Qing say this, Saya suppressed his anger and returned to calm. Next, everyone flew towards the 5 Stoyards. Yang Qing probably already understands the situation, but something like an android can't be careless. Know yourself and the enemy, and you will not be imperiled in 100 battles. When Yang Qing and everyone flew up, the top floor of the tallest building in Xinjiang. How is it? Kurayat, can you transform? Your combat power has reached 120,000, so there should be no problem. Stoyat asked expectantly. It's not stable yet, I still need a month to get used to this look. Kurayat nodded. At this moment his body was surrounded by golden lightning hair and also switched back and forth between golden and black, which means that he has qualified to try to transform into a Super Saiyan. Finally, after so many years of practice, the 5 of us are finally able to enter that realm first. Stoyat said excitedly. Next to Dodori, Ruolin and the 3 also looked at Kurayat excitedly. If one person really transforms, it means that they will reach such a state one day. 1 month. It only takes 1 month, great. Stoyart said happily. In another month, we will go and kill the android named Logan, and then we will eradicate all the androids in one fell swoop, and exterminate that group. Scientists, regain the possession of the Nova. Well, the new star will be guarded by us when the first elder is not there. This time, we were negligent, and we must make up for this mistake. Kurayat nodded, his eyes full of grimness. After such a long time, all 5 of them have also grown a lot. At the same time, the other half of the planet, a building with a round top. Logan, your perpetual furnace, we have transformed him again, and he has become stronger. A horned, red cosmic man said. The android named Logan is 3 meters tall, covered in ice blue, with a ferocious face. The position of his stomach is shining with red light, which is endless, like the sun. After hearing the words of the cosmic man, he slowly stood up and opened his eyes. A pair of eyes are full of ruthlessness and indifference. So I'm stronger. That's right, you are 100 times stronger than before. The cosmic man said excitedly, destroy those Saiyans and dissect their bodies, we will be sure to make you stronger. Ha ha, Logan laughed, his eyes full of grimness, that's great. Then, he stepped out of here, leaving a very disdainful sentence. Saiyans, just a bunch of monkeys with tails. In a month, I will take action and destroy this race. They are nothing but nourishment for me to move forward. Soon, Logan's back disappeared here. Looking at Logan's back, the universe's eyes were full of anticipation and excitement. Very good, after a period of observation, we can determine whether this experiment is effective or not. At that time, Lord Shiro's will be able to become a perfect powerhouse without any shortcomings. These artificial humans are only the first generation, and they are not the most perfect. More experiments must be done. Vaguely, it seems that on the surface, there are more powerful guys besides Logan, a powerful man-made man. Yang Qing took everyone to the outside of the room of Stoyart and others. Elder, they are inside. After the last failure, the 5 sons of inheritance are cultivating frantically. A few days ago, there seemed to be an extremely powerful atmosphere in their room, but in an instant, no more. Saiyan pointed to the door and said, then stepped forward and knocked on the door. Stoyat, Kalayat, open the door, the elder is back. When the room is empty, I am slowly crossing my knees. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Kalayat, who had transformed into a Super Saiyan, suddenly opened his eyes. Elder. The other 4 who were cultivating were also shocked, and their eyes flashed with excitement. In just an instant, the bodies of the 5 people had already reached the door. Then, Dodori trembled, shaking her right hand, and opened the door. The next moment, what caught the eyes of the 5 was that familiar face, a thin figure, a black martial arts uniform, and a faint smile in his eyes. This is their master. Big Elder. Master. The 5 of them cried out, their eyes filled with longing and joy. It has been an unknown number of years since Yang Qing left Xinqing last time. Dada, the youngest of the 5, has grown into a handsome young man this year. The world is full of vicissitudes, time is fleeting, and in the blink of an eye, the 5 of them are already so old. But as time goes on, their hearts miss the great elder more. For the 5, Yang Qing is more like their relatives. Teach them, protect them, in the most dangerous time, this person will always appear in front of them. Chapter 619 _ He seems weak. This thin man who doesn't look strong is their umbrella, a big tree that shelters them from the wind and rain. Even if one day, they really grow up and become stronger, but this big tree will still be there. Long time no see, how are you 5? The real eyes of the 5 people, Yang Qing saw clearly, and asked softly with a smile. We are all fine, the great elder is not here, we are all working hard to cultivate. Duoli said happily. I heard you were in trouble. Yang Qing brought Seiya and Lingyi into the house and found that it was a spacious suite with a training room. He sat on the sofa and asked. It used to be trouble, but it's not anymore. Dadala said with a smile. Oh, what's going on? Yang Qing wondered, and Seiya looked at Dadala curiously. The half-year-old child before has now become a handsome young man, with a graceful appearance. I am afraid that he will be able to fascinate thousands of young girls. Brother Kalayat, he has already entered the stage of Super Saiyan, and he can succeed as long as he waits for a month. Dadala said. Yang Qing's eyes showed a hint of surprise, and looked at Kalayat, who also smiled and nodded. Yes, the period from Saiyan to Super Saiyan is very difficult. If you can become a Super Saiyan, you have already walked the road that others may not be able to complete in a lifetime. If you are free, you can try it out with Seiya. Seiya also touched his fists, staring at Kalayat, showing fighting intent. Saya. The 5 looked at Saya and asked, can he also transform into a Super Saiyan? I've been able to do it for a long time, but I have never been able to find a comparable opponent. Saya said with a smile, Kalayat, you can transform into a Super Saiyan, just in time for us to fight, let me see how powerful you are. Kalayat's eyes flashed, and then he said with a smile, of course, I won't lose to you. Now, let's talk about the remodeler. Yang Qing picked up the tea brewed by Duoli and asked casually. As soon as the 5 people heard this sentence, the smiles on their faces immediately disappeared a lot. Speaking of which, it was my fault, Stoyart said. Yang Qing waved his hand and asked him to continue. When I was looking for other planetary races, I thought that a planet with advanced technology would definitely be able to restore the original appearance of a nova as quickly as possible. Stoyart said slowly, however, I didn't expect that when they saw Saya after the strong combat power of people, the idea of extracting Saiyan genes will come up, and then they will transform their subordinates and establish a powerful army of transforming people. Reformed people are different from Saiyans. Ordinary Saiyans still need a process of cultivation and growth, and gradually become stronger. But these reformed people, I don't know how they were created, they have a strong fighting power from birth. It's stronger than ordinary space warriors, and the stronger ones are already able to fight our ordinary inferior warriors. Formidable, such as Na Logan, his body has a perpetually moving furnace, which provides him with a steady stream of power. The power is very terrifying. Last time, the 5 of us went up together and could barely compete with it. Listening to Stoyart's words, Yang Qing thought a little. Is the one named Logan the strongest of them all? He asked. Yes, that Logan is their most powerful fighter at present, probably with a combat power of more than 200,000. Kurayat replied. More than 200,000, it is not strong to say, but they have not grown up, naturally they are not the opponent of that person. More than 200,000. Saya laughed. Give that guy to me, and I will beat him, and his mother don't know him. After you transform into a Super Saiyan, your strength is doubled 50 times, and you can indeed defeat him easily. Kurayat nodded. I can also complete the transformation of a Super Saiyan, so he and I are not very good at it. Worry. Huh, Saya looked at Kurayat curiously. What I'm worried about is whether the scientists behind the group have researched something strange to enhance the power of the man named Logan. No way, Dodori said incredulously. What can be researched that can increase the power beyond the transformation of a Super Saiyan? This may be. You must know that the inferior race, before, even an ordinary warrior of our clan was not an opponent. Stoyat said solemnly. Anyway, after I stabilize the Super Saiyan transformation, I will go to destroy Logan. Kurayat said softly. Whether he is stronger or not, this battle must be fought no matter what. Quote. I need a fight to be a Super Saiyan. Listening to his 5 apprentices talking to each other, Yang Qing's eyes showed a touch of relief. These guys have clearly grown after a series of things. They are thoughtful, and they are indeed the safest right now. Then this matter is left to the 5 of you, but don't let me down. Yang Qing said with a smile. Master, don't worry, that Logan will not be my opponent. Kurayat said confidently. Yeah. Yang Qing nodded, then turned to Ling Yi, who had been suffering silently all this time. This is my new apprentice, Ling Yi. The 5 people turned their eyes to Ling Yi. Looking at the latter, their faces were a little strange immediately. Ah, Master. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. This junior brother seems to be in some pain. Dodori asked. Dadola also spoke at this time. Hesitant, he seems to be very weak. The 5 were silent. In fact, they all saw that this young man was indeed weak and pitiful, and even the gravity on the new star seemed unbearable. Haha, he is very weak now, but I think he will soon become stronger like you. Yang Qing laughed and said lightly. In the future, he will practice with you and guide him more. Well, good. Stoyart and the others were stunned for a moment, and then said. After talking with a few people for a while, Yang Qing went to rest. At this time, the 5 people and Saya looked at Ling Yi. Is this kid too weak? Dadola asked. Ling Yi raised his head with difficulty and glanced at everyone, feeling very ashamed. He didn't expect that he changed his environment, and it was so difficult to even raise his head, and he finally understood what Saya said at that time. Chapter 620-New King. The gravity of this planet is completely different from that of the Earth, and it even exceeds the training uniform he was wearing at that time. From just now until now, he has been in a state of limit. Kurayat and others naturally saw Ling Yi's state. The 5 looked at each other, and Dadola walked over. Hey, you don't have to worry, it just takes a while, and when your body strength comes up, you will naturally be familiar with the gravity here. The room has a recuperation tank. If your body is injured, it only takes a short time to recover again. Ling Yi said with difficulty, thank you. But at the beginning, we definitely couldn't help you. Dadola scratched his head. You are too weak, you will be injured if you play against us. Ling Yi gasped for a moment. Was this sarcasm or disdain? After saying these words, the 5 people in Saya went to learn and practice, and only Ling Yi was left to adapt hard here. For 3 full days, Ling Yi was in such a situation. On the 4th day, his eyes seemed to suddenly become clear, and his body was very relaxed. "I'm used to it." Clenching his fists, Ling Yi said happily. He stood up and walked towards the 5 people, wanting to practice with them. At this time, Yang Qing opened his eyes. The eyes flashed with golden light. Yang Qing quietly bloomed his divine light, and in just a short moment, it covered the entire new star. Kurayat is right, Logan is really strong again. With such energy intensity, the combat power should be around 20 million. Artificial man, it's really interesting. These boys, I'm afraid we're going to run into trouble this time. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, but Yang Qing was not very worried. Both Seiya and Kalayat can transform into Super Saiyans, and they both have their own explosive means, which can instantly enhance their combat effectiveness. When the two are superimposed together, that power is actually stronger than that of Luo. The root is not much different. Moreover, Seiya has been by his side for so long, and the combat power is probably 170,000 or 80,000 at the moment, much stronger than Kurayat. He has been in Super Saiyan for a long time, and he has a more complete grasp of the power at this stage. This time back, I also have my own business. With a sigh, Yang Qing began to exude his divinity again, heading towards the starry sky around Xinqiang. He seems to be looking for something, but there is nothing in the dark universe, but there is nothing. After searching for nearly 2 weeks, Yang Qing's whole body trembled, and a bright galaxy appeared in his eyes. I found it. I didn't expect that the divinity of Abinos was lost here. It's really easy for me to find it. That's right, he was looking for the divine light of Abinos during this time. Abinos is an evil god, and his status in the demon world is not too low. The light of divinity floats quietly in this void, as beautiful as a bright galaxy. Whether it is a positive god or a negative god, their divine origin is actually the same. By absorbing this piece of divinity, how much will my dimensional level increase? Yang Qing was looking forward to it. In fact, when his bloodline was drawn out, he already knew that Abinos' divinity was actually still there, and he already had this plan. During the time on Earth, he was calculating, trying to figure out how to absorb this piece of divinity. After the gods die, nothing is left behind. Divinity represents the understanding of the universe, and it will naturally be left in the void, but no one will absorb it. But Yang Qing was different. He really came up with a way to absorb the divine. At this moment, his divine body left and stood in front of this dazzling galaxy, his face flashing with excitement. No problem, being able to absorb them. Muttering these words, Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, and then he stood up and jumped. The next moment, his body swelled and grew larger, turning into a vortex of 5 colors, spinning at a terrifying speed. This vortex is also huge, in the galaxy, even bigger than the solar system, but in an instant, this vortex is close to the dazzling galaxy. Then, they collided right after. Boom! The violent sound came, and the entire starry sky was shaken, and then, something incredible happened. With the rapid rotation of the 5-color vortex, it was actually swallowing the huge galaxy. But the galaxy is like a dead thing, without any resistance, it is swallowed by this vortex little by little. And as the vortex devoured, it became larger and larger, and its colors and rays of light were even brighter and brighter. When the quiet universe is empty, no one notices this magnificent scene, even the gods are difficult to detect. In the distant horizon, on a planet, a man dressed in green, with the word, Jia, engraved on his robe suddenly changed his face slightly, looking up at the sky. What's wrong, Lord Realm God? The strong man in the same robe asked. Jabate, I feel a strange king's breath. The King of Kings said solemnly. Jia Wang, Jabate was stunned for a moment, then said incredulously, how is this possible? The real kings are all selected from below, and there is absolutely no possibility of superfluous ones. Moreover, it will make you feel unfamiliar, Lord Kaiwang. Quote. No, it's really unfamiliar. The dimensional level of this breath is definitely the level of the Realm King. The Realm King said with certainty, and, not at all. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It was any of the 5 Realm Kings at this time. This breath is still very weak at the moment, but he is growing at an incredible speed. Can you be sure where he is? Jabit asked. I can only sense it, but I can't tell where he is. This breath is too mysterious. The Realm King shook his head, frowning. Where did the unfamiliar Realm King breath come from? Could it be from another universe? No, it is impossible. This breath is very obvious. It is the 7th universe. But why has it never happened before? Not to mention that Yang Qing's devouring the evil god's divinity was already detected by the Realm King, but Lingyi followed Stoyat and the others to a barren desert. Wind roared, the sky was covered with sand, and the temperature was abnormally high. It was simply the worst climate environment. What are we doing here? Lingyi asked Dadara, who was about the same age as him. Cultivation. Dadara laughed.